He's not red-pilled, but feminist women hate him. I present to y'all Ian Perkis, an absolute menace to the academy where he resides, or more actually, the academy where he performs the most unhinged beating on every single girl. And this time is not the good moisty beating that we like to see, is the real one, but he also has the Midas touch. But instead of creating gold every time he violently spanks a girl, they instantly develop some feelings for Lil Bro. Yeah, this is a Stockholm Syndrome manhwa, where our boy is throwing hands with any female that walks into his vicinity. I'm talking about the rank 1 prodigy of the second year who got her ass clapped by wood. Again, not the warm, comfy, oozing way that we like, the brutal one. His childhood friend also wasn't pardoned, and got her fair share of hands on her face, bro. Even the saint of the damn church was obliterated and was dropped to her knees. And if he did that with his friends, 'cause yeah, those 3 are his close circle. Y'all don't even imagine what he did to his actual enemies. This gorgeous blonde baddie that tried to seduce bro with a lil. Opsy, I dropped my towel. Unfortunately met the sword. Later, of course, she wanted his real sword. But that's just classic here, bro. I have never seen so many girls get folded by a single individual. This dude makes red-pilled podcasters look like promising husbands. No more wasting on this shit. Let's dive in it. In a forest at night, a kid slashes his sword into the big wolf's body. 2 more approach. He points his axe at them and asks who's next. They come running in a zigzag. He locks eyes on them. The beasts leap at him. He drives his weapon into one, plants another blow into the other's head, slashes one in the eye, then spins around. He spots a huge bite coming from the side and drives his sword straight down the creature's throat, taking a small bite to the arm in the process. Things kicked off intense right from the start. He's holding off one attacker when another comes from the side. He slashes at it but gets slammed into a tree. Another moves in, but this time he meets it with a heavy axe strike, burying the blade into its head, splattering the ground red. Finally, it's over. Or, not really. The boss shows up. He says that thanks to this bastard, he knows that letter is real. But before all this chaos, we have to go back a few days earlier when Ian Perkis, our protagonist, was celebrating the end of exams. His close friend Selene Haster tells him to calm down. It's still only mid-year. Another drunk guy chimes in, telling her to let him enjoy it. This is Leto Einstern. Ian says that even though he's not great at swordsmanship, he passed thanks to his riding skills and his quick footwork. The 2 of them are celebrating like fools, saying it's amazing to be at the best academy in the Empire. Selene says, "You idiots, stop acting like a fool. We've got class tomorrow morning, so I'm heading out. Later, sucker." Ian's like, "Alright, guess I'm heading back. I'm gonna sleep. See you tomorrow." Back in his room, he thinks, man, why did I sign up for morning classes? Worst decision ever. Never again. He flops onto his bed, but as soon as he falls asleep, a name appears before him, Delphiram. In the middle of a scene filled with corpses, someone identical to Ian stands up and says that name is coming, and they needed to stop him or everything would come to an end. A meteor shower rained down, and in the middle of it, the protagonist wakes up. What kind of dream was that? Delphiram? Who even is that? Never heard of them. Probably had that dream because I drank too much before. But then he notices a little letter sitting on the table. Strangely enough, the calendar showed that an entire week had passed. Pretty confusing. He picks up the letter and sees that the handwriting is so detailed it must be from a girl, which means this could be a love letter from one of the academy's popular girls. Even though he risks being late to class, you can't just leave something like that behind. The letter reads, "I thought it was just a silly fairy tale dream from my childhood, but I never imagined our names would be recorded in the history books. To Mag, I will dream of you as well. Sent by Sifia, year 571 of the Imperial calendar." Perkis looks at the calendar and sees the date doesn't match. Whoever this crazy person is, she put in some effort, but not enough. There's also a part saying that if the future isn't protected, the world will perish. He finds it all amusing, crumples the letter, and wonders, who writes a love letter in such a messed up way? Outside, as he's walking, he starts wondering, why is everyone staring at me? He glances down and sees an axe hanging at his waist. Where did that even come from? Lately, everything's been way too confusing. Suddenly, he spots Leto and Selene and calls out to both of them. But they both turn away, clearly thinking they don't want to deal with him. Leto says, "Selene, let's ignore him this time." And she agrees, saying it's better than being dragged into that weird place again. Ian, however, shouts, "You bastards, look over here." At that moment, Leto seems to notice something about him, saying that today he actually looks different from yesterday. Suddenly, he runs over to give him a hug, saying he's glad Ian finally stopped being possessed. Ian pushes him away. "Get off me, idiot," and asks Selene what he's even talking about. She tells him he was possessed for an entire week. Still confused, Ian says, "A week? But the last thing I remember is saying good night to you guys after drinking." She yells that he seriously doesn't remember anything he did. Leto explains that because of him, the reputation of all 3 of them is ruined in this academy. Their plan had been to take him to an exorcist, but every time he threatened the group with that axe. Ian looks at the axe and asks if they're talking about this one. They tell them to lower it because they're already traumatized. The protagonist is completely lost, trying to understand this whole possession thing. He doesn't remember a single thing, but maybe it's connected to that nightmare. Leto celebrates that it's over and Selene agrees, at least it ended before another incident happened. Naturally, Ian wants to know, what incident are we talking about? Selene tells him he went and did the insane thing of hitting the top student of the second year. Ian thinks that makes no sense. That girl is the one who awakened her aura earlier than anyone else. known as the monster swordswoman among all the second years, a certain Syria Yerdina. Of course, he says, you gotta be joking. I'd never hit someone like her. But Celine explains he didn't just hit her. She's been in the hospital for a week. Now she asks what he's going to do. Still confused, he asks why he have to do anything. She reminds him that they have swordsmanship class today. He's going to face her again. We then see the poor girl dragging herself in, trembling all over, saying it's unbelievable. Ian, however, just says the only unbelievable thing is how mediocre she is and smacks her across the face again. She goes flying, and then he swings a wooden strike right on her backside. What the hell is wrong with him? Someone needs to lock this guy up. It's like Divi's soul took over his body. The students are all terrified. This wasn't just a normal beating, and besides, she's supposed to be the academy's top student. Ian steps forward and tells her she needs to start suspecting every opening he gives. Clearly, she has no idea how to deal with traps. Now in the present, Ian wants to know why on earth he went and beat up this girl who's in the same class as him. Not to mention, Syria would have been fine if she were someone he could actually face again. But now, here he is hitting face to face with the gorgeous nightmare who's about to beat him senseless. Celine says maybe it's better if he just surrenders, otherwise he's about to get beating for nothing. Meanwhile, the rest of the students are impressed by Syria's persistence. She took a brutal beating, spent a week in the hospital, and still came back. Everyone's saying, man, if I took a beating like that, I'd never set foot in this school again. Obviously, this hasn't been great for Yerdina's mental state. The professor tells everyone to shut up and get ready. This fight would replace multiple lessons, meaning it was worth a high grade. But the protagonist is thinking that damn spirit could have taken care of all this before disappearing. How am I supposed to handle this now? She's the top student, which means the beating she got before won't affect her grades. But if I take a beating from her, there's a chance I'll get expelled from this place. Ian's plan is simple. Take hits for 10 minutes until she's satisfied. But in a single second, she slams a fist into his stomach and bam, he's airborne. He crashes into the ground like a cannonball, realizing that even if he surrenders, she's not going to go easy on him. He gets back up and says it's his turn. She tells him to go for it, and with a gleam in his eye, he charges forward with confidence. But then he notices something odd. His body feels strangely light. What happened during that time, he can't remember. Yerdina smirks, vanishes, snatches the sword from his hand, and drives it into his ribs. He collapses, vomiting everything up, while she asks if this time he's not showing those so-called traps. Last week, he beat her without even trying, and now he's acting like this. Ian snaps at her, telling her to shut up. He's sick of everyone going on about last week. But she's not in the mood either, saying it's his fault she got humiliated. She immediately leaps in for another strike. Seeing her midair, Ian is certain his vision and kinetic awareness have somehow improved, though he doesn't understand how. He thinks he's got a chance, but she spins into a helicopter kick and smashes him into the wall. He sees her coming and thinks she'll attack from the side, but no, she comes from above and slams him into the floor. She's like Goku's daughter, teleporting around and pounding him, throwing him to the ground again and again. Even while being beaten, he still wonders why she makes so many unnecessary movements. Then she says, don't rush in thinking you see an opening. Anything could be a trap. Isn't that what you told me last week? And now look at you getting beaten. Ouch, that's a harsh burn. She asks him when he's going to start taking this seriously. Ian realizes that even though he feels stronger, she's taking this way too seriously. He tries a sword strike, but she ducks and hits him with another flurry. This time, though, he's actually managing to tank it. He blocks a few more attacks and becomes sure that if he asks to forfeit now, she won't say anything. But she just smiles and says he's finally starting to take it seriously, and it's time for him to show that attack again. Ian watches her move in and thinks he's found an opening, but no. Someone calls out that he has 5 seconds to get up. The professor is counting down while Ian is lying there staring at ants, saying that apparently he's back to being just a normal guy. Unfortunately, Yerdina is taking it the wrong way and tells him to stop getting beaten for nothing. She knows he doesn't want to fight, but she's not about to let this slide. Still, she makes it clear that until he fights her seriously, she's going to keep challenging him to duels over and over again, until he feels just as humiliated as she did. Ian is starting to lose it. He's suffering for something he doesn't even remember doing. He can't believe this girl wants to turn him into her arch-enemy over something like this. The professor then asks if Ian surrenders, but now the boy is fired up and says no. Yerdina thanks him and agrees that they can't just end things like this. Ian, already on edge, says he's going to tear that pride of hers in half. In an instant, she uses that Goku-style teleport again, towering over him as she swings her sword straight for his head. But this time, she's not the only one landing a hit, or so it seems. Ian steps forward and catches her sword mid-swing. Getting up close, he says, got you. But damn it, the next chapter opens with him thinking he can't back down now. He's going to wipe that smirk off her face, especially now that he's starting to get used to her movements. Before it was impossible, but now he can at least dodge some of her attacks. He wants her to come at him full force. When she rushes in for a strike, it feels like he can predict every move she's about to make. So the moment she leaps for a vertical attack, he's already ready. He steps forward, grabs the hilt of her sword, and stops the swing. Getting close again, he says, got you. Then he tosses her sword aside. When she moves to get back, Ian goes in for payback. She's startled, trembling, sure she's about to get a lump on her head. But Ian pauses for a second and asks himself if this is really the right thing to do. She's already on the ground, looking like a crying child. Now he's questioning why he's taking this so seriously. Beating her up here won't solve anything. It would just repeat the cycle. This isn't about winning or losing, it's about understanding others. So he flicks her forehead instead. Definitely the kind of move that's going to make her fall for him, right? She immediately demands to know what he's doing and whether he's mocking her. But in her embarrassment, Ayan asks why she tries so hard to beat him. Yurgena answers that she can't lose here or everyone will laugh at her. He asks, why is it so important what other people think of you? No matter what anyone says, the effort you've put into improving your swordsmanship won't disappear just because of their words. Out of nowhere, he's gone full philosopher. Still, she insists she's terrible anyway because everyone will mock her. He repeats himself her effort doesn't disappear because of something like that. He's the person who's lost the most in this academy, so he knows better than anyone how selfish people can be. But in the end, what those people thought never changed his swordsmanship. And that's when Ayan's charm hits. She freezes up, apologizes, and says she learned a lot from him today, even thanking him. From the sidelines, their friends are baffled. So Ayan actually won. The tan blonde doesn't believe it. He's beaten the best second-year student twice in a row. The professor announces the result, and Ayan walks away with swagger, leaving her behind. The problem is now in the academy, wherever he goes, everyone is talking about him. Everyone's convinced he's stronger than Yurdina, but Ayan knows that's not exactly true. His mana detection and aura have improved, but if it had been a serious fight with her using her much greater aura, he wouldn't have stood a chance. He's still wondering what happened during that missing week, until someone taps him on the shoulder. He turns to see Selene and Leto. He immediately says not to bring up that possession again because he genuinely doesn't remember it. But Selene explains that they spoke to the saint from the cathedral, and she said he's fine, so there's nothing to worry about. Besides, who even cares about those rumors? It's not like they were that bad. Back then, he was just considered some filthy loser with no future. So being called a psychopath now isn't all that terrible in comparison. And then she even blushes while saying she heard some girl mention that he's not all that bad looking. He immediately wants to know who this bold girl is, but Selene steps on his foot and tells him to stop getting interested in that. What he should focus on now is that as a boy from a common family, the nobles at the academy aren't going to just sit back and do nothing. That's when Leo asks if the rumor is true, that since that day, Yurgena hasn't stopped following him. Ayan casually says, take a look to your right. They both turn their heads and there she is, peeking out from behind a tree, all flustered and blushing. And to make things worse, Selene's already looking irritated about it too. Good grief, Ayan, your life's a mess. Swap places with me. Leto wants to know how long this has been going on, and Ayan says it's been 5 days since the fight. But every time he tries to talk to her, the crazy girl just vanishes out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Yurgena is off to the side, wondering to herself what she should do. She wants to talk to him. Right at that moment, Ayan appears and says he noticed her nearby, asking if she wanted to say something. The fool takes off her mask and demands to know how he saw through her disguise. Then she apologizes and says she wants him to help her train. She also wants to get stronger. Our protagonist is thrown off. What could he possibly teach the top student of the second-year class? Aside from giving her psychological advice, there's nothing he can pass on to someone like her. Plus, he wants to put these rumors to rest, not create even more. That's why he apologizes but refuses. She insists, saying he must have plenty to teach, but he just walks away, saying he only won by luck. Then she asks him to at least help her until a hunting festival. That's when Ayan remembers the letters also mentioned this festival. Something about numerous accidents. A certain Emma from the alchemy department had gone out to gather herbs and ended up being killed by mysterious monsters. The odd girl is standing there all awkward, fingers pressed together like some shy otaku at an event, saying he could be a little kinder. But Ayan's far too stubborn to waste time on this. He tells her to talk to the professor instead. Then he runs past his friends, saying he has something important to check. Up until now, he hadn't really believed those letters, but the fact that his friends' names were written in them has him worried. In an alchemy workshop, there's Emma probably working on a test tube. Ayan is certain she knows something. The third letter spoke about getting used to living in a Rencourt, a deserted place where the sun was hot and the sea sparkled. There was a saying that if you look through the eyes of a fairy, you find hidden treasures. And now, writing letters had become part of her daily life. It seems that at the end of some chapters, there are these letters, and I have to read them for us to understand the story. Now we're under the bright sun, and there's Yurdina, moving her sword back and forth, striking here and there. The professor watches and says that's enough for today. She just needs to keep practicing her aura, and she'll be ready for the hunting festival. She thanks him, then says she came to train today because Ayan suggested she speak with the professor. But in her usual blunt way, she says she's realized the professor doesn't have anything to teach her. The man just stands there thinking this girl has absolutely zero social skills and waves her off. Her name is Syria Yurdina. I keep calling her Yurdina, and now everyone's calling her Syria. Then the professor calls out to her again and says he'll give her some tips. For the hunting festival, the most important thing is adapting to the terrain and the monsters in the area. After all, most of the higher class students have already done this. At the entrance, things might seem easy, but deep within the forest, powerful creatures await. Syria thanks him, saying she'll try to go deeper into the forest, but he warns her to be careful with that as well. Even though most of the monsters could be handled by the students, there were still some that could absolutely end her life. The story then shifts to the time of creation, when the god of light, known as Ars, and the god of darkness, Omelos, came into being. The god of light created the flow of time, and that's how the difference between past and future was formed. The law was that if this rule were ever destroyed, the world would suffer. That's why any being capable of affecting this natural order would become an enemy of the gods. The first being able to do that was known as Delphil. This is probably the story the redhead told our boy before, and he responds that he didn't understand a thing. She tells him not to bother her too much. She barely slept last night, so he should go ask someone else for explanations. Not to mention, he showed up after a whole month without talking to her, and on top of that, didn't even ask if she was doing okay. Ian tries to defend himself, saying they're friends, but she shoots back, what kind of friend only shows up when they need something? He keeps asking for help, telling her to just simplify the story a little. She says fine. She'll explain as if he were mentally challenged. To defy time, you have to be extremely strong, and there's only one being in this world with enough power to do that. Delphil, one of the servants of the god of darkness. Ian wonders, could it be that these letters are coming from this person? She tells him to stick to common sense, because nothing he's saying makes any sense. But if she had to think of someone who could send messages from the future, it would have to be him. After all, there's no other mythical being who could. In other words, this whole letters from the future thing is nonsense, and he better start locking his door properly before sleeping if he wants it to stop. Ian thinks she's mocking him, but he can't really blame her. He did just show up out of nowhere talking about getting letters from the future. She then hands him 2 potions she's recently been working on, made to reduce a person's presence. He asks if it makes him invisible, and she says obviously not, but before she can explain further, he drinks one on the spot. He immediately complains about the terrible taste, while she demands to know why he just wasted something so valuable. He tries to excuse himself, saying he wanted to see if it actually worked, but doesn't seem to. She closes her eyes and says that since he already drank it, they might as well test the results. She tells him she'll close her eyes and try to sense his presence. At that moment, Ian starts to realize even he feels strange, almost as if he can't sense himself being there. Maybe if he stayed silent and hidden, no one would notice him at all. He moves closer to make the test more intense, but she grabs him by the collar. He asks how, and she says it failed. Even though his presence disappeared, you could still smell his body. He finds this talk weird, thanks her for everything she's done, and says he's leaving. He could have forgotten, but instead he warns her, don't go to the hunting festival, you'll be killed. If you plan to go, call me first. She seems happy yet he's worried about her. By now the sun is setting, and another letter arrives. Whoever is writing them is clearly motivated. The boy falls into bed. He's not sure if these letters are even real, but at least she's safe now that he's warned her. At that moment, Leto shows up, and the protagonist gets up immediately, telling him to cut it out with this little game of leaving letters for him. He might have gotten away with it this time, but if he pulls something like that again, he's dead. Leto asks who he's even talking about, and Ian tells him to stop messing around, that he already spoke with Emma. His friend, confused, asks what this Emma thing is about and if she's okay, since it's been a while since they last saw her. The protagonist says of course she's not fine. How could she be? Good grief, is this happening right now? The girl's got a crater in her chest. In the latest letter, the woman complains that she's been sending him a letter almost every day, while he replies at most once a week. In the next chapter, we find Emma apparently being treated. The protagonist had warned her not to go into the forest, but she insisted. And I'm over here thinking, I'm sick too. Girl, come take care of me, you towering priestess. Leto and Ian are there praying as well. But the priestess says this girl was just unlucky. The monsters don't normally show up in that area. At the same time, Emma was smart enough to drink a potion that made it seem like she was already dead. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't still be alive. The protagonist asks the priestess to save his friend, but apparently in this world, priests are capitalists. You have to offer something of great value to use as an offering to create a miracle. Ian points out that she's the daughter of a herbalist. Obviously, she doesn't have any rare items. The priestess explains that the offering doesn't have to be something with high monetary value, just something difficult to obtain. Even so, she tells them to prepare for the worst. She says they can leave now, but Ian refuses. He's staying because he was the last person to see Emma. She tells him not to blame himself, then uses a power meant to help someone regain peace of mind. But apparently it didn't affect anyone, because Leto is still punching the wall, demanding to know why a monster suddenly showed up at the forest entrance. Ian wants to say something, but just then, someone calls for their daughter. The father comes in crying, asking why this happened to her. It turns out the father wasn't allowed to see her because of the ritual, but honestly, our boy thinks the ritual was kind of a sham, especially since they're all poor. Leto and Ian aren't from noble families that basically got into this academy on scholarships. That means they didn't have anything rare to offer to make the ritual more effective. So Ian hands the potion he received from her to the father, saying he should carry his daughter's achievements with him. But the father grabs his shoulder and says no. He wants Ian to keep the potion, but to never forget Emma. Seeing this, the protagonist wonders why he didn't take the letter more seriously. To be fair, he did warn her, told her don't step foot in the forest, and she went and did exactly that. But he still feels like his warning was too vague. He should have been more forceful. He may not know if the letter is truly from the future or if all of its contents are real, but now he feels like he can't afford to ignore what's written in them anymore. He needs to find this Sifia, the one behind all the writing, and make sure he prevents any dangerous events from happening. Apparently, the funeral has already taken place, no idea what exactly happened there. Leto, of course, wants to know who this Sifia is and if our fool of a protagonist has gotten himself a girlfriend. Ian smashes his face, telling him to get lost. He doesn't have a girlfriend. It's just the person who, in theory, is behind the letters. But Leto's still all curious, wanting to know which girl has him so anxious. So protagonist slams him again, telling him to shut it. That's when Leto mentions that Cephia is the name of a flower. So maybe it's just someone using a nickname, not their real name. The Cephia flower comes from the north, and the northern territory belongs to the Urdina family. Leto reaches the same conclusion he does. The only person who comes to mind is that strange girl who's always lurking behind trees. Both of them arrive at the same thought, and sure enough, the oddball shows up, offering him bags of money, saying it's compensation for helping her. He's totally confused. Not only does he not remember helping her, but that's way too much to be offering. She's giving it because she thinks he refused to teach her since she was basically asking for free training. He asks, why is she so desperate to learn from me? The more modest girl answers that it's because there's nothing left for her to learn from anyone else. The protagonist thinks to himself that the moral lesson he gave her clearly didn't sink in at all. He tells her that she already seems to be doing fine on her own and should just keep going down that path. But she responds that she can't afford to lose her chance at this year's hunting festival. At that moment, he remembers that the letter also mentions Syria participating in the festival. So he calls out to her and says that starting today, they'll train together. He wants to find out if the Cephia from the letter is actually Syria Urdina. Several days pass after they begin training. The first thing he learns is that she has 0 social skills. So bad that she even has the nickname, the rude one of the Urdinas. Second, he finds out that high-ranking nobles train non-stop all day using healing potions to recover so they can keep going. During one of these runs, she injures her foot, but she's fine. She's just going to drink a potion and keep moving. Ian tells her to take it easy. The potion might cure her fatigue, but joint strain and muscle tension won't just go away. He asks why she keeps saying the hunt is her last chance. What's making her so anxious? She explains that there's someone in the 4th year she has to beat, but if that person graduates, her chance will be gone. He tells her it doesn't make sense. If that person leaves the school, she can still find them and challenge them again. But she replies that the longer time passes, the less chance she'll have. And besides, once that person graduates, she can officially challenge the future head of the family. That's right, her older sister is even stronger. Delphine Urdina, her half-sister, with her parents have already chosen to inherit the family leadership. Since Syria is from a secondary bloodline, she doesn't even have the right to challenge her sister. The only place she has a chance is at the academy. Letter number 5 talks about how sad the bride is that she can't help him during this time when he's suffering. In the next chapter, Syria is listening to the sounds of worms while Delphine compliments her on the hard work she's been putting in. It's just a shame she was born without enough talent and will never be able to beat her. Poor Syria knows that in her family, no one is on her side. All she wants is for someone to believe in her. And now here she is, watching our boy telling her that she should be able to move again. To have strength within her family, she'd need allies, and maybe she should ask him. We skip ahead. It's the day of the hunting festival already. The academy's main event, you get thrown into the forest and you hunt beasts. Whoever kills the strongest wins, nothing dangerous at all, right? Especially considering a student just recently died after stepping into the forest. According to the letters, the protagonist knows Syria will participate, of course, and that Cephia will approach him. The problem is, he still has no idea who she is, and it's got him confused. Right at that moment, Selene calls out to him, telling him to come along. Looking puzzled, he asks why the rush. She tells him to stop being stupid. They're going together because obviously Syria wouldn't go with him after he beat her up. The protagonist explains that Syria herself offered, but then Selene gets angry, demanding to know why he's always taking Syria's side. Out of nowhere, he grabs her head and she, confused, asks what he's doing. Suddenly, things take a romantic turn. He leans in and sniffs her hair. Change your perfume, didn't you, girl? I didn't change it. It's my new facial cleanser. The guy pulls off the perfect subject change technique, the slay bastard. Selene seems worried about the trial, but Brian tells her not to worry. He's just going to have a little look around the forest. You know, the same forest where the last person who entered ended up with a crater in her chest and died. And speaking of that, no funeral? That girl, no one even remembers her anymore. And Aya knows exactly what he's saying here, but the letter already made it clear. There's going to be an attack from magical beasts, which means a whole lot of people are going to die. Kid, have you thought about warning the authorities? Or do you really think you're the protagonist who's going to take them all down yourself? Well, in this case, he is. He's there. All dramatic thinking. I'm the only one who knows the dangers in that letter. Tell more people, for crying out loud. But apparently that's not going to happen because the professor calls everyone over and says he's going to explain how the points will be awarded. As they probably know, the forest is full of magical beasts. Obviously, the goal is to kill them, but they need to be careful because the beasts are staying very close to the border. That could mean the ones deeper in the forest have also started to move out. He draws his sword and strikes a tree, telling them they need to get used to fighting in an environment where there are countless things around them that they might not expect. Ian admits it's actually a good tip since the animals, on the other hand, are perfectly adapted to this environment. Then the professor activates his aura and explains that it's a different matter for those who can materialize aura, because even if a sword's path is blocked, it will still cut through like butter. And just like that, when an enemy of Greenpeace, he's killed 5 or 6 trees for no reason at all. But he warns everyone to be careful because in this trial, they can die. Now they're supposed to pair up and get ready, but they also need to remember not to go into the deep forest because it's too dangerous there. Knowing what's about to happen, Ian is certain it's better to stick with a big group. But these guys telling everyone to go off in pairs is insanity. For him, the best option would be to inform the professors as quickly as possible about the appearance of magical beasts. Of course, as soon as the topic of pairs comes up, Celine asks if they're going together, and she gets completely ignored. He just grabs Syria and says they'll be pairing up. Only this protagonist could manage to be such a pain and still keep turning girls down. A while later, they reach the area the professor said was the limit, but so far, not a single beast. Syria comments that she doesn't sense anything, and since she's skilled at that, Ian is sure the area is empty. He suggests they take a short break and tells her to stay alert. He's standing there leaning against a tree, while Syria is fidgeting in a way that makes him think maybe there's just a shortage of men in this world. She then asks why he wanted to team up with her. Because they've been training together, and he said he would, duh. But he answers that it's because they're friends. This girl, though, says that friendship should come with some sort of exchange, that he must be expecting something. When they get back to the dorm, she can give him gold or something else. Ian tells her to relax. This is about a relationship, not a transactional deal. Friends help friends, there's no reason for her to be paying him for this. Out of nowhere, she asks if she can pose a rude question and wants to know if he's going so deep into the forest, risking himself of that friend of his. Is this all because of the girl who was attacked? Ian doesn't answer and he clenches his fists, remembers his friend, and says he doesn't know. Yeah, not exactly the most mentally stable answer. She's already a bit odd, and now she's even more confused by this guy having some emotional meltdown. Then he says he's just here to kill the beasts and asks what she would do if he were attacked. Naturally, she replies she'd have to kill the creature. He tells her that's exactly how he feels too. And the oddball thinks maybe this is what friendship means. But then he calls to her and asks if she felt that. He tells her to focus because something's off. She can't sense anything at first until suddenly she tells him to wait. From one second to the next, she starts picking up the presence of countless beasts in front of them. With that many, every student in the forest is in danger. In letter number 6, someone says that the strategic point of the Empire's port was extremely important, and that the outcome of the war wasn't over yet. These letters from the future. Honestly, I'm starting to feel like the protagonist myself. They arrive and I don't understand a thing. The two of them are standing there and Syria already wants to know if they shouldn't attack. He tells her no, they're going to run. There are too many beasts and they can't fight them head on. He asks if she's ready, and on the count of 3, the two take off running. After just 2 minutes, the boy is already out of breath, completely exhausted, and he can feel something huge chasing them. At this pace, there's no way they're going to survive. At the very least, he needs to reach the professor. But the number 1 student, the Academy's prodigy, falls again, re-injuring that already worn-out ankle. Of course, she starts going into the classic dramatic act, telling him to leave her there to die, because otherwise he'll die too. He catches a glimpse of glowing eyes in the distance. If that thing reaches them, they're both dead. But he's too much of a chatter for that. He tells her to run. She protests, saying, no, don't do this. It's my fault you're going to die. But our boy tells her to stay calm because he's got this and charges forward. The moment he does, the monster hides. He says it must have sensed the predator approaching and decided to stay out of sight. There's no real reason for him to fight it head-on like this. He takes out the potion Emma gave him and downs it, turning himself almost invisible. He's certain that as long as he has it in his system, the beasts won't notice him. To mask his scent further, he covers himself in mud, plants his sword in the tree like a climbing spike, and gets himself into position. He wants these beasts to come closer. The first one approaches. By its body, teeth, and aura, he can tell it's a demonic creature. It seems confused, probably because the scent it had been following suddenly disappeared. Perfect time to drive his sword into its skull. He thinks his aura might not be strong enough to pierce. Turns out it is. The blade sinks deep. Now that it's dead, the beast just lies there, harmless. But Ian knows this isn't the time to relax. He needs to stay focused and keep the danger away from Syria. He senses another presence, approaches, and finds another wolf. This time, though, they're moving in a pack. He counts at least 5 around him. He hesitates for a second, and the next moment, he's slashing and striking. He cuts one down, but another bites his hand, hard enough that he should have lost it. But he's the protagonist, so instead he retaliates, landing another blow, this time with the axe. And here we are back at the scene from the beginning of the story. He realizes this little axe is actually pretty useful. He also keeps surprising himself with how fast his reactions have gotten. He's feeling unstoppable, like he could take on all of them. Meanwhile, Celine throws her sword to the ground, stomps on it, and says she's furious. That bastard went off with that other woman. She says she knows they're hooking up in the forest. Just then, Syria appears and calls for the professor. He rushes over, asking what's wrong, and she tells him there are beasts in the forest, and that Ian stayed behind to protect her after she was injured. He says he understands and heads out immediately. When she was first introduced, they said she was the top second-year student. Now she's fainting from an ankle injury. The wolf pack's leader arrives, sniffing the air and spots who's in the middle of it all. Too bad, it's a trap. The boy lunges in, driving his blade deep, but 2 more show up and he just beckons them forward. They vanish in a blur, 1 on each side, but he knows that no matter how fast they are, their movements are simple. All he needs to do is watch and strike at the right moment. Since that dream, he hasn't stopped moving forward, and now he says he's going to kill every last one of them until nothing remains. Sometime later, the ground is covered in corpses, and the axe drips with blood. He wanted to believe it was over, but he could still feel the presence of another one. The strange thing was, this one wasn't moving closer. Maybe it was some kind of trap, with the creature trying to lure him forward. Smart for a beast. But he had no reason to fight. Then suddenly he catches a scent, and it's not one that makes him happy. It's a smell he could never forget, the same one from the alchemy room. Mixed in with it was the scent of that very same potion she'd given him. His expression changes immediately. He knows now that this is the one that attacked Emma. The piece of cloth in its mouth makes it even more obvious. With full confidence, he tells the beast is going to die here and now. But the wolf just spits the cloth out, letting it drop onto his sword. Ian realizes the damn thing is mocking him. It must be looking to get revenge for what he did to those hairless cats earlier. The problem is, those creatures weren't high-ranking beasts. This one is. His thoughts are cut short when the monster launches the first attack. It shoots past him like a bullet, and before he can even register it, he's thrown back and slammed into a tree. But he gets up quickly. He's stunned. He didn't even have a chance to react before the wolf was already on him for another strike. This time, he thrusts his sword forward, mana burning along the blade straight at its mouth. The wolf is forced to dodge, and Ian uses that opening to swing his axe, slashing across its face. But even with all this strength and all the mana he can muster, it only leaves a shallow cut through its fur. The wolf comes at him again, and he has to use the axe defensively to block its claws. The beast retreats, flipping through the air like 30 times in a row, and Ian mutters that he should just put this thing in a circus. He notices some of the wolf's teeth are cracked from when it bit down on his sword. Still, it's not like Ian's in perfect condition either. While he's lost in thought, the wolf suddenly lunges, only to change direction at the last second. It's like playing against Ronaldinho, looking one way, striking the other. And it works. If he's confused, imagine how Ian feels mid-fight, facing an opponent that just won't stop toying with him. Then it's as if the wolf hesitates, thinking it's risky to go any further, until it suddenly decides to fire off a Kamehameha-like blast, smashing Ian into a wall. It follows up with its claws aimed at his chest, ready to pierce, only for the chapter to end right there. In the next chapter, we see that at the moment of the hit, Ian caught a glimpse of an opening and played dead. The wolf approached with a big grin, acting differently from how it did when it tried to kill Emma. Just as he expected, it aimed for his stomach again. And that's when Ian shot up and drove his blade into its neck. In the end, beasts are idiots. This one lowered its guard the moment it thought he was dead. Ian tells it was foolish to try finishing him off the same way twice. Then he delivers a mana-charged slash that echoes through the forest. The beast's body drops lifeless to the ground. He declares that it died because it wasted time playing around thinking he was weaker, and that from now on, it will forever be remembered for dying because it attacked Emma. Meanwhile, the professor is rushing through the forest. Suddenly, he sees an explosion ahead and wonders if Ian is dead. He arrives at a scene filled with corpses, confused because in theory, the only person who should be here is Ian along with the beasts. Celine and the other students arrive, but he tells them Ian isn't there. They'll have to keep moving deeper into the forest. Then someone quietly calls out to Celine from the side. It's him, the Aura farmer, sitting right next to the wolf's corpse. He calls out to the others, teasing that they took their time getting there. He's even emotional, calling out for this Professor Derek, who, in truth, didn't do a damn thing. And with that, Ian collapses, only to open his eyes later inside the saint's temple. From what he's heard, it's going to be a while before he can leave that place. Everyone says he was lucky to make it out alive. That wolf, as strong as it was still only in its first few years of life, which meant it could have grown much stronger. That's when Leto shows up, calling him a complete idiot who's lost a few screws. Nearly dying just to act cool for a girl makes no sense, especially since when a girl actually makes a move on him, he's always like, I'm too much of a man to be with a woman. Leto points out that he probably survived because of the potion, and the protagonist agrees. Leto immediately calls him an idiot again, saying he could have given the potion to Yurdina, left her up in a tree, and gone to get the professor to help kill the wolves. Ian admits it really does sound like a smarter plan, too bad that's in the past now. Leto says he wants to strangle him, but also mentions that weird Yurdina girl must have some mental problem. She's been circling the temple 12 times a day. Ian thinks to himself that he really has attracted an odd one, and just as he's thinking that, bam, Celine throws herself into his lap. Easy there, Celine, I thought you had a bit more self-control. Leto is off to the side thinking she didn't even acknowledge him, didn't say a word, while the odd one is sitting there chewing her fingers. Leto then says it's time to collect the boy's reward. It looks like he earned 70 gold coins. Ian's still complaining about the fact that this girl bit his hand, but she grabs the other one and says they're going out for dinner tonight. She knows a restaurant that specializes in magical beast cuisine, and that's where they're going. And there she is, still sitting in his lap. No one's going to comment on that. He grumbles that he just woke up after being injured and she's already bothering him, but she clings to him and cries, saying she thought he was going to die. Meanwhile, the oddball is holding her close, thinking she smells good. She keeps crying, saying he should have just left Syria there to die. He tells her he can't just abandon someone in danger like that. And just like that, another girl's falling for him. She says he's the most important person in the world to her and nothing else matters. Ian is confused, wondering why she's making such dangerously forward moves. He asks himself if nearly dying is what made her act this way. She's holding his face, telling him to stay still. Ever since that 7-day dream, his life has completely changed. Leto says something and the two pull apart. Poor guy, I almost feel bad for him. He says he didn't mean to interrupt his friend's date with Dear Jr., who's like a sister to him. Eternal friend zone, the poor soul. Then Celine runs off and Leto tells Ian he should pay attention. He shouldn't just give all of his attention to Syria and ignore Celine like that. The world of women is complicated, and apparently some trouble is coming because our boy from the future says that looking back now, Leva's words were important since the relationship between the two ended up turning for the worse. No letter from the future was needed to figure that out. In the next chapter, Syria walks through the academy while everyone calls her the rude one of the Uridinas. The rumor is that she only got lucky in the last test because she was paired with someone talented. Otherwise, she would have come in last. Selene is standing there thinking it's all true. Ian really was the one who killed all those magical beasts, and in the end, she just ran away. He didn't have to fight. It was her mistake, and it was her responsibility too. But he acted like a knight and said, "Don't say that, beautiful. We're friends." And just like that, this twisted romance takes another step forward. She remembers clearly the moment the professor brought him back nearly dead because of her. She still wonders why he risked his life like that. In the past, she hadn't been able to answer that question, but now she was sure. Her thoughts are interrupted when he calls out to her. As she turns toward him, she realizes that for the first time, she feels comfortable around someone. He wouldn't even have to say a word, just his gaze would be enough. What's going on here? This is starting to feel like a shoujo manga. Let's hurry through this romance and get back to the main plot. She arrives at the hospital, opens the door, and sees him lying in bed. He reaches out his hand to her, and she approaches, blushing and shy. He's reading a small red book, no idea what it's about. She shows him a bag of money, and he sets the book down, noticing her worried expression. She brightens when she sees that he's recovering, and he tells her not to worry. She smiles again. She brought him a pile of gold coins as thanks for saving her, but he's reluctant to accept it, saying it's unnecessary. They're friends. Just holding her hand is already enough to make her melt. Right then, Selene walks in with a good morning, but of course, she spots her rival and shoulder check. Honestly, I'd warn Selene to be careful. Syria is ranked second in the academy, but apparently not, because that so-called top 2 gets floored by a shoulder bump like a complete fool. She awkwardly gets back up and says she's leaving. And then Selene tells him to leave too. What the hell? This girl's got some attitude. Ian starts to protest, but she cuts him off, telling him to focus on thinking about what the two of them are going to eat today. He remembers Leto telling him to stop ignoring Selene. Meanwhile, Syria is outside, clearly downcast, and people are starting to notice. Off to the side, a few guys are whispering that she's even more annoying than before and that they should just get rid of her now. One says he already hated her when she was at the top and the professors were spoiling her, and now he hates her even more for being a disgrace to nobility. He asks Teen if he agrees. The tanned, blonde-haired guy tells him to be careful. One wrong move and they could face retaliation. But then someone else shows up, saying they can share some information about Syria Yurdina if they're interested. Teen stands up and tells her to speak, since he's curious. The green-haired girl pulls down her hood and says they don't have to worry. The Yurdina family won't do anything to them because Syria isn't from the main bloodline. Meanwhile, Ian arrives at the hospital to see poor Emma. Where's the saint with the curves? Hand over those gold coins. But that alone wouldn't be enough to pay for her healing, would it? And then, there she is, arriving with a commanding presence. It feels like a miracle. She asks what Ian is doing there had he come to visit. After all, he'd already been discharged from the hospital. What happened? He ignores her question completely and asks about Emma instead. She explains that with continued treatment, Emma can be kept alive, but that doesn't mean she'll recover. Is he really going to do it? Go through with a big gesture? He asks if her earlier offer, the one about giving something valuable, is still valid. He wants to know what he could offer. She tells him any item of great divine power or strong magical power would work. Usually, the remains of magical beasts are used, but obviously, Emma's father never had the chance to get anything like that. Ian asks if offering a high-ranking beast would be enough. From what he's heard, such a beast would be worth about 70 gold coins. She says that still wouldn't be enough, but maybe, if it were an adult magical beast, it could work. He thanks her for the explanation and excuses himself. She says she'll keep praying for Emma's recovery. As he leaves, Ian thinks about a certain monster mentioned in one of the letters. Maybe that would make a good offering, but then he remembers he barely managed to deal with that wolf, and that was already pushing his limits. I saw a comment asking, why is the saint wearing something so sexy? Is that even legal? Sounds like someone's ready to have the saint arrested. The next chapter starts with Ian walking into the room, calling for the professor, who says that from the looks of it, he's feeling better, then immediately asks what he wants. Ian wants to know if the professor would be able to handle a magical beast stronger than that wolf. The man replies that obviously it's hard to say, depends on how strong the monster that appears is. On top of that, it's a rare thing to happen, since he probably won't even see beasts larger than that one. Ian finds it strange. With so many creatures appearing out of nowhere lately, how can the professor be so sure a bigger one won't show up? The man explains that the chances of a creature stronger than that appearing in the southern forest are very low. Normally, beasts stronger than that only appear in places with an extremely high concentration of energy. That kind of environment usually exists where there aren't any people around, so obviously it wouldn't be here. Not to mention, they hold a hunting exam every year, which keeps the monster population even lower. Ian pushes again, asking what if a strong one somehow survives and shows up? The professor answers that it's very unlikely, since the stronger beasts have an even more noticeable presence. Ian still doesn't buy it. He's worried that one might show up because of what the letters said. But the professor insists that the hunting competition is when everyone goes after the strong beasts, so if there was one like that around, it would already been found. Out of nowhere, Ian twists the professor's words and says it sounds like he doesn't care if the students die. The poor guy is caught off guard and says that's not what he meant at all. Besides, everyone who participates in the event is there to overcome crisis. Ian gets the message. In the end, no one's going to take action unless something actually happens. Once again, he has no choice but to rely on himself. I'll admit I was criticizing him earlier, but now he really did ask the professor for help, and the man genuinely didn't do anything. Somewhere else in the academy, Syria was having lunch when those guys started bothering her again. She doesn't understand why they'd gone back to this when they'd stopped before. Then Teen comments that she must be the Yerdina girl who grew up without a mother. Suddenly, she turns toward them and approaches, while the guy asks if she has something to say. Syria calms herself down and turns away, thinking she doesn't know where they heard that, but she's not going to waste her energy on it. Teen then tells her to keep ignoring them, just like she's always ignored everyone, and follows it with a kick to her arm, calling her the so-called brilliant one of the Yerdina family. Her food falls to the floor along with her. And to think the narrator earlier said she was the number 2 of the second year. Looks like second year isn't all that impressive after all. The scene shifts to Ian walking through the academy, thinking about how he won't have to eat hospital food anymore. That's when he hears some guys talking about someone trembling at the academy. Apparently, it was something related to the Yerdina family. One of them says that Syria is a disgrace to the family, that no one cares about her, and that her mother was of low status. She shouldn't even have gotten involved in all this. Another, with red hair, says they don't even have to worry because there's only one person in the academy who would defend that weirdo. From the side, Ian asks if they mean Ian Purkis. The guy turns his head. Yep, that's exactly who they mean, only to find himself face to face with the king of their nightmares. Ian tells him to repeat what he just said. The guy immediately stammers that they were just talking about how wonderful the weather is today. But the next moment, his friends go flying and Ian tells him they need to have a little talk. He wants to know exactly what conversation they were having. Judging by the way things went, the guy probably got roughed up a bit. Later, the group slams the door, complaining that those punks at the academy have no respect anymore. That's when Leo calls Ian over and tells him to take a look at this article. Ian's eyes widen in shock when he sees that the whole thing's about him. Ian Purkis, 23 years old? Damn, I thought the kid was younger to be that scared of women. The newspaper says he's the talk of the town now after killing those beasts in the forest, even one that was high-ranking. Everyone's saying he's now on the same level as the upper-class folks. Meanwhile, Miss Syria Yerdina, 22, the second year who used to be at the top of the department, is practically starving. And during the forest incident, she ran away and abandoned him. Ian, confused, asks who wrote that or if she went to call the professor because her foot was broken. Not to mention, he can't understand why he's getting so much praise. Leto just tells him to take advantage of it. His reputation's looking good. While the arrogant Syria Yerdina ran away, he killed all the creatures, and that's the kind of thing that earns you respect. But he doesn't think it's a good thing and wants to know who wrote something like that. Leto says it seems to have been Princess Ball, and he shouldn't think for a second that he can do anything about it. Ian feels uneasy. This is the girl who doesn't care about poor people and just humiliates them. Too bad there's no way to change the story. Leto asks why he's so intent on changing it, and Ian says he's sure this won't be good for Syria. It looks like a lot of nasty rumors about her have been spreading recently. Outside, Leto comments that at least Ian gave some guys a beating, so maybe they'll back off for a while. Leto asks what year they were in, and Ian says they were all second years, one blonde and one with brown hair. Leto says they must be part of Teen's group, who's a third year. He's got a bad feeling about all this. For so many people to suddenly start provoking Syria, someone's got to be pulling the strings. One possibility is that it's Teen, since he's from the north. Maybe, through his connections, he got hold of information about her. Ian says he gets it now. One thing's clear, they're going to have to deal with that group. So they move on and find her there. He calls her, and she turns around looking all messy like an idiot. I'll always make a point of reminding that, in theory, she was the top student of the second year. He asks what happened, and she remembers a bit earlier when she was walking through the academy and someone commented that even her mother was from a low-class background. The friend agreed and said the head of the Delphine family probably found her mother on the streets. At that moment, Solian had had enough. She'd been holding back, but she was about to say something. When she approached, the guy asked what she was staring at. They said they were talking about another girl, not her. Unless, of course, the story just happened to be the same. She lost it and rushed forward. But apparently, they activated some earth magic right under her, and she tripped. Right then, she seemed to get immobilized, and the guy walked up and poured wine over her head. Top 10 most useless women in stories. She just stayed there like trash, lying on the ground like an ant. She says she held back because it was better than fighting and causing more trouble. Ian wants to know who the bastard was, but she only answers that the guy apologized and said it was an accident. And since the insults weren't directed at her name, she can't really prove anything. She's sitting there crying, saying she knows that if she complains, she'll only cause more trouble for her family. This girl's so dumb, I'm actually starting to feel sorry for her. Is this my type? Never thought so. She wipes her tears and thanks him for listening. She says she's fine, but he tells her that she might be fine, but he's not okay with it. He's going to go pick a fight. Elsewhere in the academy, all the guys are hanging out like idiots, talking as usual about the loser who fell like a fool. Teen says it's hilarious, and his friend replies that it must have been the most luxurious bath she's had in her life. And right then, look who's showing up, face all darkened, making it clear he's in a bad mood. Don't even bother talking to him right now. He goes straight to those bastards and demands they tell him where they heard about the maid's life. One of them just smirks and asks why he would say anything. Oh really? Ian doesn't waste time, lands a punch right to his face and sends the guy to the ground. The guy warns that he must be trying to get his whole family destroyed, but Ian doesn't care and keeps beating him down. He smashes the guy away and another one, all stiff and awkward, rushes in to throw a punch. But Ian slashes at him, sends him flying like he's about to take off. And Ian's still calm, building up his aura, telling them they'd better be ready to spill everything and apologize. He notices the other guys are holding swords, meaning they're not magic users. Aside from those two idiots, the only one worth worrying about is Teen, a top third-year student. So obviously, beating him won't be easy. But Ian's not worried about that right now. First, he's going to deal with these two, and then he'll handle the last one. The guy's charging all pumped up, but Ian thinks this is going to be easy. He decides to act first, steps in, blocks one guy's attack, makes him stumble, stares him down, then whips the back of his neck. He looks around, wondering where the others went, and then wham, he takes a blow to the back of the head. When he turns, two of them are leaping at him, but he blocks the hit, throws them off, and just like that, sends them flying. This kid really has a knack for knocking people through the air. Then he slams another right in the head, rushes in and smashes the other one in the face. Wait, did he just use the hatchet? That one's not getting up, took a direct hit to the skull. And now the only one left is Teen, who's giving him that condescending look and drawing his massive sword, wanting to know how Ian's improved so much. He guesses maybe Ian got some miracle drug from the Yerdina girl during their morning training. Ian demands to know why he's aware that he and Syria trained together. Teen smirks and says he's been keeping a close eye on him lately, since he's been attracting attention, especially for defeating Syria herself. And just like that, Teen's in front of him, guys like a flash. The problem is, Teen's sword is much bigger, and he sends Ian flying. He tells Ian he might have talent, but he's still got zero magic. Ian knows he's right, but even so, he'll find a way to win. The fight bursts into light and explosions, but it's not going to be that easy. Teen summons a magic circle in the middle of the arena and fires a lightning bolt. So the guy's more of a mage than a swordsman. He tells Ian to give it up. He's not going to win just by standing around and dodging. Ian snaps at him to shut up, but Teen shoots back that if Ian wins fair and square, he'll be quiet. After all, men from the southern region accept the consequences of a fight. Ian knows this jerk is a liar. He mistreats Syria just because he can't beat her, and now he's spouting this nonsense. Teen charges again, and Ian already knows the attack's coming from above. But then, in a flash of lightning, he takes a hit to the arm that blasts into the ground. He gets up, breathing hard, while Teen says he's curious. When he saw Ian fight Syria, he noticed him dodging attacks that should have been impossible. Ian knows exactly why. That was when he was possessed by the spirit. And speaking of that, it happened once and never again. Honestly, the spirit could have been his mentor. Take over his body, charm all the girls in school, and then leave Ian to deal with the chaos. It would have been hilarious, but there's no way the author would give us that. Looking at the ground, Ian remembers someone mentioning he seemed to use a technique called spatial steps. And one way to make it easier to pull off is to use it on soft ground, which luckily is the case here. Watching the terrain, he seems to find the path to win this fight. Meanwhile, Teen keeps attacking, saying he's interested in knowing how he pulled that move off. While dodging, Ian is just waiting for the perfect moment. The blonde guy keeps laughing, asking what's wrong. Had he already lost the will to fight? If that was the case, he was going to charge forward and finish it once and for all. But right then, his foot sinks into the ground, and that's when Ian moves to the side, dodging the attack. And then comes the axe swing. Seriously, I don't even know how that thing hasn't taken someone's head off yet. How is that even possible? He swings it right at the guy's face. What is this thing, a toy? And of course, the follow-up is obvious, right? After you smash someone in the face, what do? You throw them to the ground, get on top, and choke them. Our dear Ian avoids women just so he can straddle the blonde guy instead. At least he's telling him to shut up before delivering another axe blow. Although it's apparently a toy again, I think he's hitting with the handle instead of the blade. Now it's clear. He's striking with a blunt side. And he warns that he's going to crush his head until there's nothing left. He really leaves the guy wrecked, at least for now. Then someone in the back shouts, asking how he dares, and says he's Lupin, the son of Countess Grainella. He warns that Ian is done for, but almost gets an axe to the skull himself. Ian asks if he's looking to have his head smashed too. Ian tells him to start talking unless he wants to find out, and the guy says he doesn't know her personally, but it was a girl with green hair. Everything they found out about Syria's mother and all the rumors came from that woman. Ian steps closer and says you really can't expect much from trash like him. But he better remember that if this happens again, there won't be a next time. Leaving everyone beaten down, Ian is confident they'll at least stop bothering Syria. The problem now is that he has to find out who this person spreading the rumors is. Meanwhile, Syria is walking through the academy looking for him. She's worried he might have gone to do something because of that conversation they had. Then two other girls spot her and say they found the lost orphan. They tell her not to call them mom just because she has no family. Syria holds herself back, wanting to cut them down with her sword, but decides it's not worth it. Still, the pests keep going, saying they feel like she's a bit shaken. Then Teen shows up and tells them to be quiet. I don't get it. He's got this malicious expression, but he's saying they'd better not do anything unless they want to get beaten just like he was. And apparently, it's working because the girls are all apologizing. But I'm not sure what his deal is. He's still giving off this negative aura. He tells them they have no way out and that they'll be beaten by Ian Purkis just like everyone else was. Could be trying to set something up, like Ian attacks the nobles and then has to be expelled. I don't know, maybe or maybe not. Because now they're all bowing down to Syria, who tells him she didn't expect him to play this whole role, and if he wanted to talk, he could have just looked for her later. Man, the artist really needs to change these backgrounds again. It looks like he's doing something intense, whispering threats in her ear, but he's actually saying he's afraid of being humiliated if the rumors spread that he went to beat someone up. So he'd rather apologize first. With that said, he tells her to let Ian know that they apologized and then he leaves. As soon as they're gone, other girls come over to apologize. It's almost like they're pretending Ian is some kind of exorcist who broke their spines. Now Syria can only think that she can't keep depending on him like this. Next time she's going to handle things with her own hands. Yeah, right. I doubt it. And we're back to the saint who really should be thrown in jail for the way she dresses. She's telling Ian to stop putting himself at risk. She heard he beat up 8 people yesterday, and if it weren't for the Rainella family, this would have snowballed out of control. He asks what she's talking about, and she explains that the Count was extremely displeased. Ian's thinking that maybe, judging from what that Lupin guy said, that must be the kid's father, probably the reason he didn't get into trouble. That boy really kept his mouth shut. The indecent saint says she's heard the boy's story before and knows he's a good person. Besides, she owes him a favor from last time. He asks what last time she's talking about, and she warns him not to forget. That's when he realizes something must have happened that week that he doesn't even remember. Apparently, her name is the Saint. He still doesn't know her actual name. She's a seraphic being he would never have had the chance to meet if not for the Academy. What he doesn't understand is what massive favor she owes him to always be covering for the messes he makes. Then Selene, another one who's always fired up, I've said it before, every girl in this academy seems to be, opens the door, asks if he's alright, and immediately hugs him. She seems jealous that he caused all that chaos over Syria, but he says he'd have done the same for her. After all, he'd already promised that. She replies that it seems he does remember then, and Sophie recalls a moment when her family was struggling, and she was crying in the flower garden. When he saw his best friend crying there that day, he swore he'd always protect her. She hugs him again, and he tells her not to worry, saying she's like a little sister to him. Cue the legendary reverse friend zone. She stomps on his foot, saying he can't ruin intimate moments they're about to have like that. He claims he doesn't know what he did wrong, and she tells him to shut up. Then she says they better take care of this Yurdina situation soon. People criticizing her wasn't unusual, but now it's the whole academy, even people who don't know her. He wonders who's behind it, and she says it's probably a group. Otherwise, it wouldn't have spread like this. Considering the first and second years don't have much contact, it could only be the 4th year. And now, wouldn't it make sense to tell your friend here that you already know it's a 4th-year girl with green hair? There can't be that many of those. As he's leaving the hospital, he runs into Emma's father, who greets him. Ian tells him not to be so formal and asks how she's doing. The father apologizes, saying he's useless. He can't help his daughter, who's fighting for her life. Ian tells him not to stress out, that a miracle will happen. Top 10 motivational lines. The father thanks him for killing the beast, and Ian says it was nothing, just self-defense. They say their goodbyes, and Ian walks away thinking he needs to do whatever it takes to save Emma. On his way back, he reflects that now that Leto's helping and he's got multiple connections, he'll soon get the answers he needs. As always, he finds Syria training. He watches her movements, wondering how he even managed to beat her. Honestly, it's not just him. Pretty much everyone in this school has beaten her at this point. She notices him, greets him, and blushes like an idiot as usual. He asks what she's doing, and it's explained that she's practicing the Golden Lion fencing style, a technique from her family. It's a style that traces multiple cuts in the air, but at the moment, she can only manage 3 because she's not strong enough. He seems interested in learning, but she says it's not necessary. He's already stronger than he should be. He's left not knowing how to respond, but eventually says, all right then. She thanks him for what he did yesterday and for resolving everything. Ian tells her not to worry, that he'll always do everything for her because they're friends. I thought he was going to call her little sister too, just like he did with the other one, just to get her riled up. But no, he didn't. Now she's fired up in more than one way. Still, she says that from now on she's going to handle her own problems. He kind of mutters that if she ever needs anything, she just has to say so. With that, she goes back to training while he keeps watching her mana, noticing it's more stable now. Mana itself reflects a person's mental state, and before, hers was like a pale blue. Now it was becoming a deeper blue, which showed that her mindset was changing too. Ian says maybe it's because now everyone knows about her mother, but she replies that happened a long time ago. She doesn't care that much about it anymore. Back then, she was only 6 years old. Her mother had been banished from the family, and all she begged was for them to take care of her daughter. But the man just ordered them to drag that woman away. She says her mother was disfigured. Her mother tried to reach for her, but the little girl, afraid of suffering the same fate, didn't say a word. Man, 6 years old and already that cold. Good grief. The Urdinas, however, warned her that if she didn't prove herself useful, she'd meet the same fate. Ever since then, she's been working hard in swordsmanship to prove her worth. I don't know if she managed to convince the family, but she sure hasn't convinced me. Ian then says all they have to do is win the next hunting festival. Beating Delphine, the strongest in the academy, wouldn't be easy. But since it's a team competition, he believes they've got a chance. The scene shifts to the green-haired girl telling the blonde that her sister is going to be in the festival. The tall blonde replies that she's going to have to finish her off for good. Next chapter, it starts with Ian thinking about going back to his room to see if he got a new letter. But this annoying girl just won't leave him alone. She's tugging on the sleeve of his shirt, asking if he wants to have breakfast together. He figures he can check for the letter after having breakfast if he says fine. But right at that moment, Celine Haster shows up, wanting to know if they finished their morning training. Syria says hi, but Celine immediately wants to know what this talk is about inviting him at breakfast. The two of them, as always, were supposed to have breakfast together. She grabs his arm with a lot of force and pulls him along. Ian asks since when do they have breakfast together. And at that moment, the other one grabs his other arm. The girls are going at it, both of them putting everything they got on the line. Celine asks what Syria thinks she's doing with her Ian, but Syria snaps back, telling her to let go of his arm. Now they're suddenly all fired up for something, huh? When it comes to fighting, they're useless, but fighting over a guy, they turn into two wild dogs. And Celine just makes it worse. She tells Syria that the only reason she's even getting any help is because Ian said he feels sorry for her since she doesn't have any friends. Ian quickly responds that he never said anything like that. Syria, however, doesn't seem to believe him. She says she knew Celine wasn't a good person, probably one of those who talks behind her back. Then she lays into her, saying it's disgusting to see her with this inferiority complex. That's exactly what it is. And she plays dirty, adding that if Ian's only with her because she seems pathetic, then she'll just keep being pathetic forever, and the two of them will stay together. Things escalate fast. Syria's already reaching for her sword, and it looks like we're about to have a full-on brawl in the middle of the school. Ian, though, just walks off, saying he wishes these two weirdos would leave him alone. Which, of course, is the worst decision possible, because anyone thinking logically would have gone with the option of keeping both of them around. But no, the so-called chick magnet, who actually seems more interested in guys, is now chatting with Leto. Leto comments that those two really seem to enjoy pestering him, and he never imagined his friend would have two beautiful girls fighting over him. It's crazy. Still, he can see Celine's side of it. She probably has no idea how to deal with a rival suddenly showing up out of nowhere. Ian, clearly confused, asks, "What do you mean by that?" To which his friend replies, as always, that Ian doesn't have a clue about anything. At that moment, our protagonist asks about the investigation, but Leto says it'll take about a week. A whole week to find the green-haired girl from class 4? Doesn't sound complicated. Half an hour and I could do it. Out of nowhere. Ian then asks if Leto's going to start believing in the future letters now. Leto looks confused, so Ian says he'll show him. But when he pulls it out, it seems Leto can't see anything. Ian tells him to hold his hand, but then realizes Leto's hand goes right through it. That means Ian is the only one who can touch or see it. Leto immediately says Ian must be cursed or something to be seeing this, but Ian insists it has to be real. After all, that's how he knew about Emma's accident. On top of that, he already knows that during the next hunting festival, a powerful magical beast will appear. Leto just replies that it's normal for there to be plenty of strong students, which doesn't quite make sense given what Ian said. Ian repeats that there will be magical beasts, and again Leto says yes, there are strong students. That's when Ian starts realizing that when he tries to explain what's in the letter, the other person can't quite understand it. Leto then says that, assuming Ian's telling the truth about a letter he's never actually seen, it probably means he's being affected by some kind of time distortion or incomprehensible magic. And apparently, everything Ian says about the letter is aimed at preventing a crisis. Now Ian's the one feeling a little lost. Leto explains that even if such letters did exist, it'd be hard to actually use that kind of power, because everyone knows it's extremely difficult to change the order of the future, since it affects the order of the entire world. Ian remembers that this is more or less what Emma told him. Leto then points out the most obvious paradox. If Ian got a letter from the future warning about the beast, the moment he killed that beast in the present, it would change the future, meaning the beast would never have existed, creating a loop that would shatter time entirely. Nobody messes with that kind of magic because it's dangerous enough to destroy the world. And if Ian's the one messing with it, he might just be the person who ends up destroying everything. The protagonist doesn't seem convinced, but Leto says it's just one possibility, so he should be careful. At least it's clear that whoever is sending these letters seems to be trying to prevent some kind of problem. Still, the so-called Lady Magnet, already insecure, now feels even more worried that he might actually be bringing about some kind of destruction. He's just a kid, not even a noble, from an isolated country. How is he supposed to deal with all this on his own? Alright, fine, he blocks the sunlight and says that for now, there isn't much he can do. But right then, someone steps on his back and calls out to him. When he turns around, a girl in a hat asks if he's the one who hit her little brother, and apparently she's even smaller than he expected. She starts walking closer, and now there's a whole gang standing in front of this unlucky protagonist. That's when he notices the fool Lupin nearby, looking frightened. Now he realizes who the big sister Lupin mentioned is Elsie Ranella, who says they're not going to just stand around after he messed with someone from her family. How many chapters do you bet it'll take before she's standing there blushing next to him and trembling? I'd say it's going to happen in this very chapter, but place your bets. Turns out she's the leader of one of the largest factions in the academy. The protagonist can't believe that even after the Saint told everyone not to get involved, this girl still came to bother him. For now, his plan is to maybe just let them hit him a bit so the whole thing will be over quickly. But just then, they hear a snap, and when they look back, there's a guy lying on the ground. And here comes another tough one walking in. Both of them are startled, and the newcomer apologizes for barging in like that. She walks closer, it's another force to be reckoned with. Delphine Yardina tells Elsie to stop putting on a tough act in front of the other students because it's embarrassing. Elsie fires back, calling her rude as always, and the two start glaring at each other. Meanwhile, the protagonist just standing off to the side, not even sure how this situation came about. Out of nowhere, he's got two girls he doesn't even know fighting in front of him. So he turns to leave, only for someone to grab his shoulder and ask where he thinks he's going. Better not be planning to run. At this point, the protagonist is already thinking about grabbing his axe and smashing someone's face in. But suddenly, one of the girls shouts and Elsie says that Delphine must want to spend some time with that boy. She even adds that it's strange she'd want to have fun with him after he's already done whatever he wanted with her little sister. What the hell? Don't go around slandering Ian Purkis. He's doing everything he can to avoid women, and now you say something like that. But then there's another loud snap. He's already slammed the first guy to the ground. He warns Elsie to think twice about what she says. She can insult him all she wants, but bringing Syria into it will cost her dearly. The little witch panics, calling for her people to protect her. But in the very next moment, the protagonist smashes the first one right in the mouth, sending him to the floor. A second fool comes in swinging the huge sword, but Ian dodges, blocks another strike with his axe, and then swings down from above, landing it square in the guy's face. Another one down. He glances to the side and manages to dodge a lightning strike. The attacker even smiles, saying she's looking forward to a fair fight against him. Elsie says he must be out of his mind if he thinks he's going to win, but he just says he's willing to give it a shot and charges forward. In an instant, he's behind her and lands a hit. She blocks it. I thought for sure he was about to get nailed and faceplant into the ground. Some part of Ian's spirit definitely lights up when it comes to hitting a woman. He practically teleports in. Elsie tells him to give up, but he's not going to break her shield. But he just answers that he's curious to see how much he can endure. She reinforces her shield and tells him he's delusional if he thinks he can really get past it. He might have some decent moves, but he's still in his third year and doesn't stand a chance. Even so, he throws his sword like a boomerang, catching the girl off guard. The moment she turns around, he shoves his hand against her shield and slams her head into the ground. Now he comes in with his massive axe, aiming the sharp edge right at her. She has to lift her shield, which is already starting to crack. She's staring at that big chunk of steel in front of her, thinking there's no way he might actually beat her, and she's supposed to be the best magic user in the academy. But he keeps pounding away with his axe while she seems to be looking for the perfect opening to take him down. Then the shield finally starts to splinter and breaks completely. She's trembling now, and the onlookers are shocked to see it actually shatter. Behind the barrier, the fool starts crying, begging for help. But Ian isn't about to go easy on someone who's trying to ruin his reputation as the Academy's resident virgin. He raises the axe and says that if she started this, she's going to see it through and give her life with honor. He slams the blade into the ground beside her head and warns that next time she won't be so lucky. When it comes to humiliating a woman, this guy takes it seriously. No wonder that when the spirit took over his body, he went around hitting every woman he saw. Now I want to see if that talent runs in his blood because Delphine asks if he can spend some time with her. Wait, what? She says that, but then the scene shifts to Leto laughing because he's just heard that the axe maniac struck again. The protagonist says he's going to get beaten up, but Leto tells them both to calm down for a second. Then he wants to know about Ian's conversation with Miss Delphine. Ian says there hasn't been one yet, but they're supposed to meet later tonight. Then he tells Leto to just say who's been starting those rumors about Syria. Leto takes out a letter and tells him to read it. When Ian doesn't react, Leto says he's calmer than expected. Ian answers that even he's not exactly sure why. He had already suspected something and had a few clues, but now he's certain it's because of that. Whatever that is, he doesn't say, and neither of us will find out because he didn't explain. Leto asks what exactly he plans to do, and Ian says that depends on how they respond. We then see Syria in the forest, probably thinking about the axe strikes he landed, realizing he fought for her again. Oh my god, Ian is so amazing. And speaking of him, look who shows up asking why she looks so sad. Now she's all teary-eyed, saying she just causes trouble and wants him to stop worrying so much about her. Ian, just take this girl to your room already, so she stops with this tired, drawn-out romance. She asks, can I give you a hug? Huh, what do you mean? Wait a sec. Too late. Oh my god, what's happening? A woman is grabbing me. He calls her name, startling her, and she pulls away. And just to be clear, this protagonist is 23 years old. Not 14, not 12, 23, and he's blushing because she hugged him. That's why I like that Chinese series where the guy spends 10 million per second on women and takes every single one to bed. It balances things out. Right in the middle of this back and forth where nothing actually happens, a notices Sifia flower on the ground. Tomato Cheeks comments that it should only grow in the north. She's never seen one this far south. That's when Ian remembers that Sefia is the name or maybe the alias of the person sending the letters. Taking the chance, he asks Syria if she likes it. She says yes. Her mother loved it, and that's why she does too. Ian starts to wonder if, in the future, she might have taken that flower's name for herself and is the one sending the letters. But then, why would she try to hide her name? Either way, whoever it is, this flower clearly means something important to her. Also, he just needs to stay calm because during the hunting festival, he's going to get close to this person even if he doesn't remember it yet. But could Sifia really be Syria? If that were the case, then she'd be the one he marries in the future. He shakes his head, thinking that even if that letter was reliable, she's still just a junior. He can't let himself get distracted by her. He needs to focus on what he has to do, which so far has mostly just been beating people up because of her. Then he asks if it's already certain that Miss Delphine will succeed the Yardina household, and if, by any chance, she has no possibility at all. She replies that she doesn't have the qualifications or ability to be the successor, so there's no way she could compete. Her older sister holds all the real power, and the entire family supports her. But the protagonist suggests that maybe she's being kept on a leash. After all, she's still a Yardina daughter, and in theory, a fight between them would be the most natural thing to expect. Syria says she's never had the courage to challenge her sister. She's always stayed quiet, obeyed, and done everything she was told. Her sister always made it clear that she wasn't useful enough to the family, and when the time came, she'd be discarded. So she's always lived in fear. The first real chance she sees to challenge her sister will be in this hunting festival. But now she's blushing, already wondering why he's even asking about this. He puts a hand on her shoulder and says that eventually, maybe even during this event, she might have to fight her sister, and all he wants to know is what kind of person she is. Later that night in the Hall of Adalos, a man greets our guy and says he'll show him to her room, and already knows that visiting her like this at night is going to spark some very interesting new rumors. He reaches the door, opens it, and immediately turns red. The girl is waiting for him in revealing clothing with plenty of skin showing. He's probably already wondering how he's going to protect his virginity in a situation like this. He even tells her she should change into something more appropriate for a professional conversation. She asks if she looks that bad, and he says no, she looks beautiful. She thanks him and tells him to sit down. Still flustered, he sits and says she should be more careful with what she wears around men, but she says she doesn't care about that. Seeing beautiful things makes people want them, and a woman's body, like hers, is one of those things. Most women protect themselves because being desired is dangerous. But in this academy, no one can beat her and no one can have her, so it doesn't matter what people think. She clearly had a whole prepared speech ready for that one. He just sits there awkwardly, kind of accepting it. She tells him he seems a bit clueless, and he explains that he was born in the countryside, just a simple guy. She tells him to get used to it because it'll be part of daily life from now on. And now he's starting to wonder if she's actually trying to seduce him. If there was any doubt, it's gone now because she leans in and says she wants him, the axe-wielding boy, as her ally. She's never met anyone as bold as him, especially someone who would strike the strongest witch in the academy like that. The protagonist is confused. He doesn't get why she's doing this. That excuse sounds flimsy. There's definitely something more behind it. And I'm not even going to say what she's probably after. A big swing of that axe. He asks if she knows that Syria has been bullied recently. She answers that those people are getting bold. They're not respecting the Yardinas anymore. The protagonist says he's found out about a certain student who's been leaking Syria's personal information, and he's confirmed that this person has been coming in and out of this very dormitory. The blonde asks him to be more specific, and he says fine. He already knows that the person spreading information about Syria has to be a Yardina. Someone with enough connections to influence countless people into acting, and yet no one dares to mention her name. And considering all that, he knows there's only one person who fits, Delphine Yardina herself. The blonde compliments him, saying she thought he was a bit dumber than this. Apparently, he come prepared. But why would she do something so cruel to the little sister she claims to love so much? Ian says it's because she knows she's going to be challenged at the hunting festival. Delphine laughs and says that while it's a possibility, he doesn't have any evidence. The protagonist says all they have to do is ask the green-haired girl. Another woman for him to smack around like he needs much convincing. Delphine says there's no need to go that far. She admits she was the one behind all of it. She had planned to let her sister do whatever she wanted, but when her sister came up with the idea of challenging her at the hunting festival, she had to make it clear why you don't challenge the master. The protagonist says that doesn't make sense. Styria just wants to prove her worth. But Delphine cuts him off and asks straight out whether or not he's going to become her ally. She hadn't expected him to have such incredible skills. But then, what's this? Out of nowhere, our boy swings his axe, telling her he'll have to decline. Working with someone as fake as her would be the worst thing possible. He rejects her with pure spite, but she just laughs, asking if her plans are really that obvious. And suddenly, she's holding a knife to his neck, warning that if she wanted, she could end it right now. Ian's surprised she had a hidden weapon tucked away under that tiny bit of fabric. She says of course, she always carries a little protection. Still, she's clearly interested in him now, having realized he doesn't hesitate. And if her sister played rough, this one takes it further. She says she wants to train him like a hunting dog. Ian tells her she'll regret it, but she says she'll only regret something the day she's defeated by someone else. Their talk ends there because it's time for him to leave. He manages to restrain himself, but then goes in for another axe swing, this time with the blade. She locks eyes with him, spins, and makes the axe barely graze her. He really had gone for a clean hit, but she apologizes, saying he still has a lot to learn, then launches an attack of her own, knocking his axe upward. She admits it was a good try. Might have worked on someone else, but now it's time to crush his will and courage. Then, something happens and her wine glass falls to the floor. She pressed the knife to his neck. He twists his arm into an awkward reverse grip, sliding his sword up. And seriously, this outfit of hers keeps slipping. Girl, pull it up. She's impressed he managed to counterattack right after she forced his axe away. She says she finds it amusing that she called him the Prince of the Axe. Cringe. But his real main weapon was actually his sword. She asked if he's really trying to kill her right here because she's not sensing much killing intent. He replies that for him, putting the strongest student in the academy into this situation is already enough. She bites her lip in anger, thinking she never should have let herself be put in such a risky position. And then she decides it's time to get greedy. And if there's one kind of attack Ian can't win against, well, you already know. She makes a certain move and glances back. Wait, now she's blushing? You pull that kind of power move and now you're covering yourself up. Right then, someone outside asks if they can come in because they've been hearing a lot of noise. Ian pushes Delphine back to get some distance, and the maid hears something, opens the door, and finds herself looking at quite the peculiar scene. In a flash, she apologizes and runs off. And if the sister blushed a little, this one turns even redder. Our boy crouches down and takes a quick look, shameless. But then he's already at the door, says goodnight, shuts it, and leaves. Obviously, the new lunatic is now all giddy, probably drawing little hearts on her notebook. Next scene. Everyone in the academy is gossiping about the axe maniac who supposedly threatened an unarmed senior. Seems the guy's been at the academy for 3 years, and no one ever imagined he was this crazy. Suddenly, Ian shows up behind them and tells them to cut it out. The two weirdos run off, and he thinks at least his bad reputation is making people afraid of him. Still, one thing's for sure, his life has changed a lot lately. As he's walking in another part of the campus, he notices some people looking at the announcement board. 12 days left until a hunting festival begins. Since he wants to take part, he's ready to sign up. In theory, he needs 4 people, and so far it's just him and Syria. The ideal lineup would be him, Syria, Leto, and Celine. But what's he planning? Turns out he wants at least 1 mage on the team. The guy's not thinking about friendship, he's ready to ditch his buddies. He even drops Leto, saying there's no way he wants him on the team. That's it then. Scram kid. The protagonist keeps insisting, but when it comes to persistence, he knows what he's doing. Still, you can bet you won't insist this much with Celine. He mentions that he needs a mage, and Leto says to just listen. He's got an idea. And of course it's time for Elsie, the little witch from before. I guessed she'd fall for him in a single chapter, but I was wrong. Anyone who guessed 3 or 4 chapters wins. In the next chapter, she's chewing someone out, saying that just because she lost once doesn't mean her power has weakened. The guy's apologizing while she's forming energy balls, about to blast our boy, but doesn't follow through. Right then, someone calls her name and she tells them to shut up and stop interrupting. That is, until she turns around and sees who it is. Yep, it's him. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his little axe, and asks if they can have a chat. The other guy bolts, and she's left shaking, demanding he just say what he wants. Leva's plan was simple. Send Ian in with his axe to intimidate her into joining the team. Ian smiles, saying he's only here to talk and she doesn't need to be afraid. But she's trembling all over, asking what he wants with her this time. As he steps closer, she gets tense, slipping into a defensive stance. But then he pats her head, saying she must be going through a lot. Looks like, folks, it's happening this chapter after all. She calls him a bastard and he asks why. Obviously, she answers that it's because everyone's been mocking her ever since she got beaten. They're all saying she's an idiot who just cries because she lost to a 3rd year. He tells her it's actually her own fault because all he wanted that day was to take a few hits and leave. But when the blonde showed up, everything changed. Elsie asks why he's even talking about that woman. He says it's because she should get revenge on Delphine. It'd be the perfect way to get her pride back. After all, Delphine announced to everyone that she'd win this year's hunting festival to bring honor to her family, so making her lose would ruin her reputation completely. Elsie agrees, saying that's exactly what Delphine deserves. Ian then asks if she wants to join him in the hunting festival. She doesn't seem eager at first, but after locking eyes with him and then looking away, she says she doesn't think he's that strong. Still, it'd be better to bet everything she has than let Delphine win so easily. Elsie agrees, adding that seeing that woman win would only make her angrier. Ian says that's exactly why she should team up with him so they can secure the victory together. She answers that fine, she knows she's being tricked somehow, but she's willing to give it a try. The strategy he had in mind was pretty obvious. Elsie would serve as support, using only a few well-placed attacks, while he stayed on the front line, blocking strikes and creating openings. At the same time, Syria would move in from the side, delivering her chain of slashes to finish the job. The only problem was that this way, all enemy attention would be on him, which would make things tough. He'd need someone else. And finally, he remembered his childhood friend. It had to be someone skilled who had good synergy with him. Celine came from a family of hunters, so maybe she'd be good at tracking magical beasts. The problem was that she and Syria weren't exactly on good terms. Still, with little time left, he decided he couldn't be too picky. Next scene, he goes to talk to Syria, who immediately grabs him by the collar and demands to know what he was doing in her sister's room yesterday. Awkwardly, he tries to explain, but in that hesitation, she's already decided something's definitely wrong. He pulls free while she fumes, now realizing her sister is interested in him. She also seems angry at Ian because he once said he'd always be by her side. Our protagonist is totally confused. What rumor is even going around? Either way, he changes the subject and says the team is already decided. They needed a mage, so he invited Elsie. Syria brightens instantly, stating that with Elsie helping, they wouldn't have to worry about either offense or defense. But then he adds that the second person would be Celine. Right away, Syria says that's not a good idea. It'll just cause arguments. He replies that no one's as skilled as Celine at hunting monsters. Syria just says she hates people who like to argue like that girl does. Ian had expected she wouldn't like it, but he couldn't back down now. He puts a hand on her shoulder and says that he knows it might be difficult, but he'd like her to trust him this time. And of course, with just a couple of words, the King of Smiles convinces her. Now all that was left was getting Celine to agree. So here we are, at night, she's sitting on a bench and he walks up, asking how she's been lately. She stands up, hands clasped in front of her. Seriously, every girl here looks like they stepped out of a cute anime. He's direct, asking if she wants to join his group for the hunting festival. Syria is already in, and even though he knows they don't get along, he wants to invite her. Celine admits she doesn't like Syria, but then changes her expression and says fine. No one works with him as well as she does anyway. Ian thinks at least she accepted quickly. With that, he assembled the perfect little harem for battle. The only problem now was, of course, team coordination. One was always looking to pick a fight, another had zero social skills, and Celine would definitely want to compete for his attention. His initial plan was to get them to work well together, so it was time for some practical training, though the situation between them was risky. They're standing side by side, glaring at each other, while he stands next to Elsie. The tension is obvious. Elsie comments, "What do you even call it when a team doesn't want to talk to each other?" The protagonist just tells her to be quiet and shows her the axe, reminding her she promised to join, so she better not back out. Hidden under her hat, she mutters that fine, but it's not like this training is going to be worth anything at this rate. Then Celine says if they're just going to stand there staring at each other, they might as well postpone the training until tomorrow. But he tells them not to worry. A special guest will be joining them. When Elsie asks who this person is, suddenly, there's an explosion right beside them. Everyone turns, thinking they're about to be attacked, but it's just Professor Derek, asking who wants to become the legendary hunter. Elsie starts to say she's not really in the mood for his class, but then our boy flashes the axe and she goes quiet. The professor tells them they should take this seriously because he'll be evaluating the level each of them is at. He explains that he's going to disappear, and they'll have 2 hours to find him and land a clean hit. Elsie looks like she's about to complain, but before she can, he vanishes right in front of everyone. They head into the forest, and as expected, no one can track him down. Celine says they just have to observe their surroundings and they'll spot some trace or clue. Ian asks if she actually knows how to do that, and she replies that of course she does. She's not some spoiled noble like them. Elsie and Syria immediately point out that they also have hunting skills, noble or not. Celine asks why she's so defensive, and Syria says it's not fair for her to assume nobles can't hunt. While they're wrapped up in this little drama, Ian notices a footprint nearby. Celine praises him, saying that hunting close to her must have made him pretty good. This girl just can't stop provoking Syria, who snaps at her to cut it out and focus. Celine tells her to stop being jealous, and Syria fires back that she's the jealous one. Good grief, can we stop this already, ladies? We got a hunting competition to focus on. Right then, the professor appears above them and reminds them that not every magical beast runs away. He drops down, blasting the area, and says they're way too distracted. At this rate, there's nothing he could teach a team like this. But then he notices they were all protected and compliments Elsie's quick reaction. She just shrugs it off, saying it's basic for the strongest mage in the 4th year, only for him to snatch her staff in an instant, hit her in the back, and nearly break her other arm. At the same moment, Syria tries to flank him, and Ian sees he'll need to give her some support. She goes for a slash, but he easily dodges and taps her on the back of the neck. And just like that, Ian hasn't even moved from his spot yet, and both girls are already down. Ian tells Celine to help Syria because they need her, but she refuses, saying the 2 of them are enough. He tells her to stop it, but she shouts that she hates how much he cares about Syria. Thankfully, the professor cuts off another brewing argument, saying a monster won't wait for them to finish. Soon enough, all 4 of them are on the ground, and he says their teamwork is pathetic. He can't even understand why Celine Haster is on this team. Ian already knew things wouldn't be peaceful, but he didn't expect them to fight over every little thing. And honestly, the solution to all of this starts with Ha and ends with Rem. Later that night, in her room, Celine is sitting there looking down, thinking about Ian when he was a kid. When she comes out of the bathroom, she notices a small letter on the floor. It invites her to meet in the Eastern Forest at 10:30 to talk about something. She recognizes Ian's handwriting and wonders if it's because of what happened today. She goes to the forest and calls out, asking what it's about. Ian turns around with that confident aura, and she's already blushing, wanting to know why he wanted to meet her so late. He gets straight to the point, asking how long she plans to keep picking fights with Syria and why she's acting this way. Celine doesn't hold back, saying that Syria is just plain rude. The protagonist disagrees, saying Celine's the one being like that. Celine admits she's tired of Syria and that she provoked her on purpose. And then, out of nowhere, Ian tells her to come at him because he's going to settle this once and for all. Wait, is he seriously about to fight her? This guy's idea of solving problems with women really isn't normal. She's standing there all tense, asking what the hell he's even talking about. Has he lost his mind? He tosses her a sword and says, "Come on, let's duel." But Ian, don't go hitting me like that. Why would we even duel? It doesn't make sense. Shut up. I'm the one calling the shots here. Whoever wins gives the orders, settled? Wow, you're such a jerk. Fine then, I'll beat you and make you obey me. And she meant it. On the very first swing, she had her arm raised high and was coming in hard. When it's about winning over a guy, these girls put their whole soul into it. But when it's a regular fight of the academy, they just get beaten. The protagonist asks if she drank some kind of potion, but she says she learned it from his spirit, a technique that puts all your strength into one single attack. And apparently, it worked. He's thinking this damn spirit has been teaching her things it shouldn't have. Then she tells him to get ready because she's going all out, and she comes down with another vertical strike aimed straight for his head. He's impressed by the strength but dodges easily, noticing her movements are still slow. He goes in for a counter, but she shows surprising flexibility, rolling away like an armadillo, ending up behind him. She swings, he raises his sword to block, and it looks like she's about to land a clean hit on his leg until he pulls out his trusty axe and knocks the sword out of her hands. And wait, blood? What the hell? He's never even hit a villain with the sharp end of that axe, and now he's using it here? This guy, I'm telling you, he should be arrested. She says she knew he'd pull out that axe. Realizing he needs to change tactics, he switches to a spinning axe throw. She moves it in, saying that tossing weapons like that won't change anything, but he throws not only the axe, but his sword as well. When she blocks the sword, he catches the axe midair and goes in, ready to finish off his childhood friend. She stumbles, drops her sword, and he goes to grab it, only to turn and try for a sword strike himself. But seeing the scene, Ian knows this won't be just any cut. He's aiming straight for her chest. And yeah, blood spurts, but it's from her driving her arm into his strike. She realizes that if he hadn't stopped her attack with his arm, or she hadn't stopped his, they both would have been dead. Still, if there's one thing this guy knows how to do, it's farming that confident aura. He puts a hand on her head and says he's the one who won this time. She tells him to get treatment, but he just says she needs to apologize to Syria. She gets mad, saying there are plenty of other things he could have asked for, but he falls asleep right then. It would have been pretty depressing to wake up in the church again, facing those giant nuns with the forbidden uniforms, and speak of the devil, it's Celine saying he's finally awake, and that it's a good thing the injury wasn't anything serious. At that moment, Syria walks in, saying she heard from the sink that he got hurt. Celine takes a breath, stands up, and apologizes for always picking fights. From now on, they can share Ian. He thanks her, figuring maybe things will get better like this. But Syria says what Celine does doesn't even bother her anymore. She's dealt with it all her life. Still, since Celine's apologizing, she admits part of it is her fault too. From now on, it'll be a happy little trio. The protagonists touched, the plan worked even better than expected. Now the Brutes more united for the hunting festival. With that settled, all that's left is to perfect their teamwork. He's still looking forward to the day the evil spirit takes over his body again. For now, the towering saint walks in, saying it's good to see he's feeling better. Then she tells the two girls to leave so she can treat Suryin. The protagonist wonders why he's suddenly feeling a strange chill. Celine gives her a sharp look and tells the saint to take extra good care of him because she really likes the boy. But the blessed one simply replies that if she likes him that much, she should make sure he doesn't get hurt in the first place. Celine freezes up, flustered, and leaves. The saint then tells the serious one to get out too, but Syria says she wants to stay. The saint replies that would only be possible if she were his wife. Syria lingers there, blushing a little, and asks if that makes her his lover. The saint says no to that as well, and then kicks her out. Shutting the door, she tells Ian to stretch out his arm. He obeys and asks why she threw them both out. Ignoring the question, she tells him to stop getting hurt just to impress women. She's already realized his body won't be able to handle much more. Lately, he's been showing up here constantly, and sooner or later it's going to result in some kind of permanent damage. She also gives him a piece of advice. As the saint of this place, she says he shouldn't take part in the hunting festival. His body is already at its limit. Ian thinks that, no matter what she says, his participation is unavoidable. She asks him to promise, and the shameless guy promises without hesitation. Seriously, why doesn't he just say, I have to go, I need the credit? No, he lies straight to her face. Just then, a strange-looking man with green hair shows up, asking if much happened in the month he was away. This is Urin, the saint's third-year guardian. Ian says it looks like he's back from the Kingdom of Light. The saint welcomes him and asks if he managed to bring the item. Urin says it took time, but here it is, a blood crystal, a sacred treasure given only to saints, and there's only one in the entire kingdom. This item drastically strengthens the saint's healing abilities. So long as someone isn't 100% dead, she can now save them. Looking at Ian, Urin starts to say something, but the saint cuts him off, confirming that yes, with this, Emma could be saved. The problem is the item is extremely precious, so unless it's an emergency and she has permission from the kingdom, it can't be used. I thought she'd be able to level up with it, but no, it drains her power, so she can't just use it freely. She then asks to excuse herself from the boy. She tries to place a hand over his heart, but it's hard to even find it with so much mass in the way. With that, they leave, and Ian thinks that if he had a choice, he wouldn't want to be in this position either. But there's too much at stake, and he needs to take part in the hunting festival. He promised Syria they'd win. He also needs to kill a high-ranked beast to get an item that could save Emma. Above all, the letter warned him about an incident that's going to happen. Too bad for the saint, but he's going to have to get hurt again. Training with the professor continued, and the big day finally arrived. The legend who built his harem in just 24 chapters arrived with his crew. Elsie compliments them, saying she thought they wouldn't stand a chance, but at least now they won't be getting in each other's way. Ian tells her to take it seriously, as if everyone's life were on the line. Elsie doesn't believe it'll be that serious, and just as Ian's about to say something, a knife comes flying at him out of nowhere. He blocks it with his axe. $1 quadrillion says it's the crazy blonde, half-naked, and sure enough, it's her. She says it's been a while since they've seen each other, Prince of the Little Axe. He tells her that was extremely risky, but she tells him to stop exaggerating. She knew he'd dodge it easily. Besides, she only came to say hello to her little sister. Ian immediately tells Syria to take a step back and disappear like she's always done. In letter number 9, the sender thanks him, saying it was thanks to him that she was able to win the hunting festival. Finding that monster was terrifying, but they survived. It was also interesting to discover its weakness was the horn. Next chapter, right after Delphine says that, the protagonist can't help but think she truly is a terrible person. She didn't need to go that far just to discourage Surya like that. The protagonist tells her to stop being ridiculous. Just because she's interfering doesn't mean she's going to ruin their chances of winning the hunting festival. Delphine tells him to be quiet because she's talking to her sister. Then Elsie steps in, telling Delphine to shut it unless she wants it beating during the competition. Still, the older sister presses on, telling both of them to stay out of it because she's addressing Surya. That's when Surya remembers how the blonde always told her to stay in her place, insisting she could never win, that she wasn't useful enough, and that in the end, she'd only suffer. Surya freezes up, unable to respond, until the protagonist tells her she's not a child anymore and just needs to stand her ground. She doesn't have to feel intimidated, especially since she's in the competition to overcome that very thing. Surya calls out to her sister, saying this time she won't back down. Of course, Delphine says she's looking forward to it. It's been a long time since their rivalry meant anything, and now the hunting festival will be much more interesting. She turns to leave, but Ayan calls out to her, tossing a blade and saying she forgot something. Before it can reach her, a shaved head guy steps in, blocks it, and knocks it back. Ayan catches it in midair and asks why they don't just take what belongs to them. Delphine says it's a gift for stopping that surprise attack. Ayan says fine then and tucks it into his shirt. The shaved head guy compliments Ayan's axe skills. Elsie tells him to just say who he is, getting involved like this. The stranger pulls out 2 axes and says he'll show his own skills with the weapon. He starts doing some kind of trick display, and the protagonist is completely baffled at whatever this guy's trying to pull. Ayan casually flicks his finger from his side and ruins the guy's little performance, making him step back. The stranger tells Ayan to stop acting crazy and attacking out of nowhere. Ayan says he was just showing his own skills, too. Then a blue-haired girl complains, but the guy tells Asia to calm down. He's just demonstrating his abilities to the kid. Another long-haired guy calls him Mark, and Mark tells Furman that he's on his way. Before leaving, Mark tells Ayan that if he's interested in joining the circus, he's welcome to come along. The group leaves while Ayan stands there wondering what kind of offer that was. Not before Delphine adds that she's looking forward to meeting the Prince of the Axe in the forest. Selene's confused, wondering why those people suddenly came to speak to them directly. But in the next scene, the competition's about to begin. The rules are simple. Each team has until 8 at night to capture a magical beast. After that, the judges will evaluate the strength and difficulty of the beast they bring in, and the ranking will be decided from there. The event's about to start, and everyone's told to get ready. The protagonist is convinced that if he catches some horned beast, he'll finally be freed from those letters. He tells that creature to wait. He's about to cut it down and end this competition. 3 hours later, nothing. They're still wandering through the forest, lost. Elsie points out exactly that, at this rate, they'll lose without doing anything. Selene agrees, saying unfortunately she's only been detecting weak creatures like little rabbits. She wants to know what they're going to do. The protagonist's stumped. He was so focused on the possibility of a powerful beast showing up that he didn't consider there might be none at all, and they could just lose. Then Surya tells them to wait. Something's wrong. She can't sense any presence around them. The forest is far too quiet. Ayan finds it strange. By now, even if they hadn't run into anything high level, there should have been other animals around. Elsie, however, says she's excited. She's feeling a strong magical presence coming from that direction. The protagonist is already sure it's the horned beast and tells everyone to stay alert. The group is there, each one ready to strike, weapons poised to draw. They keep advancing slowly until they come across a pile of dead animals. They can't understand why. Maybe it's some creature marking its territory. But as they move a little farther ahead, Ayan tells them to wait. Just beyond the tree, there's a massive beast, the exact horned one from the prophecy, which immediately locks onto them. Ayan shouts for everyone to get into position. One roar from the creature sends a blast of wind across the whole group. Ayan quickly calls for Elsie's protection and tells them to stick to the training plan. With the barrier up, he warns them to be careful. There are no fallen trees around, which means the creature knows exactly how to move without causing destruction. Elsie casts a speed-boosting spell, and Ayan charges in, saying he'll create an opening. He calls out to everyone that its weakness is the horn. They don't understand how he knows, but he just tells them to trust him. Surya goes in for the first slash, but the creature tilts its head to avoid it. It's 6 or 7 times larger than any of them. It swings a massive paw at Surya, who ducks low to dodge. Beautiful form, but instead of using that to spring back up, she's left vulnerable and about to be crushed. Selene tells her not to be afraid and to keep pushing forward, intercepting the attack so Surya can advance. At that distance, Surya is sure she can land the hit. But when she drives her sword in, the creature splits open, or maybe it just shifted. Either way, it's something demonic. It launches straight for Selene's neck. That's when Ayan realizes how this thing moved without knocking down trees. He warns Selene to watch out, throws his sword, and it lands squarely in the creature's head. The beast retreats toward its body, swiping at the two of them as they try to fall back. Then, in a blink, it's small again. They can't even read its movements. Both girls ask how they're supposed to hit something like that. Ayan says they'll have to rely on Elsie's precision. Her magic should be able to stop it. The three of them need to focus on buying as much time as possible. But before he can say more, an arrow merely hits him and half the forest explodes. He's the only one who gets blasted far away. Selene circles around the side while he brushes it off, saying it's nothing. He's here to tank. They keep pressing forward, slashing from both sides of the wolf-like beast. It goes in for another bite, this time pinning Celine to the ground. Meanwhile, Syria and Ian run to shield Elsie. She begins casting, asking them to hold it in place. Syria moves in for a strike at the horn, but the monster swipes her away again. Ian comes in from the side, tossing his sword upward, and seems to land a solid blow to its snout, but the sword is batted into the air. At least it creates an opening for Elsie, who says that's enough. A magic circle appears. Lightning and smoke fill the forest. Ian is certain there's no way the monster could survive such a large-scale attack. But when the smoke clears, the creature is standing there staring straight at him. Elsie immediately realizes the boss has lightning resistance. Ian charges forward, wondering why none of this was mentioned in the letter. The only high-level magic Elsie has mastered is lightning, which means they're in trouble. The plan now is to buy some time and think of a new strategy. That's when he notices a slight gap between the horn and the rest of its body. He tells her they're going to try again. She says it's pointless because of the lightning resistance, but he just tells her to keep quiet. They don't have time to think of something else. And of course, with a plan like that and an IQ of 16, it doesn't work. The fact that the boss had lightning resistance made it obvious it also had mastery over that element. And sure enough, it started conjuring an electric sphere in its mouth, blasting the forest once again. In letter number 10, the sender wrote that it was good they managed to kill that beast. It was a shame they were suddenly attacked right afterward, but in the end, it was still worth it. The next chapter begins with the beast attacking again and Ian shouting for Elsie to get out of the way. The lightning almost hits her, but Syria steps in, pushes her aside, and is sent flying along with her. Celine goes for a counterattack but gets thrown back, exploding into a cloud of smoke. The protagonist tries to push forward to draw the monster's attention, telling it to focus on him, and the creature obeys, swinging its neck and lunging in for a bite. He tanks the hit but gets thrown backward. At least he notices the beast doesn't spam its lightning attack, meaning it must have some kind of cooldown. Since it had just used it, all he needed to do now was buy time until Elsie could cast her attack again. He strikes with both axe and sword, drawing blood, telling the creature it's not over yet. But the monster activates its electricity again, sending him flying. And now, it looks like he twisted his ankle. Before he can get up, the beast is already lunging for another bite, but Syria appears, using her family's secret technique, the lion sword style, delivering 3 slashes to its neck. But this annoying boss stretches its body unnaturally, dodging them all and lands behind the protagonist. Seeing that nothing's working, Syria asks what they're supposed to do now. Celine can still move but can barely help, she's nearly spent. Elsie shouts for help, saying the monster is about to move again. Ian tells Syria to hold out against just one attack. She asks what the plan is if she's risking herself like that, but he only tells her to trust him. She agrees and charges in to intercept, getting knocked back. The beast raises its head, and Ian appears above it, diving toward the horn. But damn, it bites him in the forearm, making him curse at it as he tries to bury his axe into its snout. Looks like he got a solid hit in, and at the same time, he starts drawing his sword, driving it into the base of the horn at the back of its head. Breaking free from the creature, he's still airborne when the monster begins casting another spell. But Ian says it's too late. Elsie's lightning falls from the sky, striking the exact spot where the sword is lodged. The beast begins to shrink, writhing in pain. Ian remarks that if you put a conductor right at the top of its head, that's gotta hurt. Even with lightning resistance, the sword carried the electricity straight inside. That was the end of the damn thing. He pulls the sword free, Elsie looking startled but telling him not to worry. It's over. Ian, still in his confident mode, raises the bloody blade to the sky. Elsie, now excited, says they'll do really well with this. It was a named monster. Ian celebrates, saying this probably secures their victory. Syria beams with pride, and Celine is thrilled too. But, as we already know from the letter, something's about to mess everything up. Ian warns them to stay alert. There could be others nearby. Right then, a scream rings out, and when he turns, Ulmer is there, slamming an axe into Celine's shoulder. Ian shouts, but a knife comes flying toward him, forcing him to block, only for Furman to suddenly be right in front of him, grabbing his arm and slamming him to the ground. And then someone steps forward, saying it's a shame. Isaiah, the blue-haired one, is already holding Elsie down while the others tell everyone to stay still. Someone steps right up to Syria. It's her, the blonde in the robe, saying that whoever takes this beast will win, and it sure won't be them, unless Syria was planning on facing her. Meanwhile, Celine's taking axe blow after axe blow. Seriously, are you trying to chop the girl to pieces? What's going on here? Enough already. Over there, one of them is frozen in place like a popsicle, and the protagonist is lying on the ground doing nothing. Then Syria lifts her sword and says she won't back down. Her sister smirks, telling her she should already know she's still far from her level. Syria tries to use that special technique, but one slash from her sister tears through it, and then a kick straight to the stomach sends her skidding across the ground. Even so, the determined one gets back up, saying she knows she's not ready, but she's not just going to stand there and watch. She's not a child who only cries anymore. She'll fight. Delphine praises her, saying she's grown, but insists she still has no chance. They pass each other like it's some Chidori Racing Den clash, but Delphine simply glances back with confidence, while Syria collapses like a sack of organs. The protagonist shouts that she's too far away, but one of the men warns him to keep quiet unless he wants to get cut too. Delphine, however, tells Furman he's being too polite. He should have split Ian Purkis in half already. After all, it's their fault for letting their guard down. And honestly, I'm enjoying this because I can feel our protagonist is about to destroy everyone here, and I'm looking forward to it, especially seeing that smug blonde robe wearer get put in her place. Our 10 IQ hero then asks how they even knew where they were. Delphine says it was simple, the dagger she gave him. From the start, she placed a tracking enchantment on it, making a fool of him so they could find them easily. He realizes it's his fault they were located and that all the girls got hurt. Yeah, taking that dagger was idiotic. He also knows that at this rate, he won't be able to follow the letter's guidance. That means Emma will die, Syria will no longer be able to uphold her family's name, and she'll leave both her home and the academy. That path would lead to the appearance of the one who will bring the end of everything. In one of his memories, someone holds his face and tells him not to forget. He'll need a potion made by Emma, and Syria must reach her full potential. He has to open his eyes and not lose the people who mattered to him. Looking at the dead beast, Delphine says that this time she was quite ruthless, but in the end, in this world, only the strongest survive. But right then, she hears a shout, turns around, and the giant axe almost takes her head off, hitting the wolf instead. Furman is on the ground clutching his face while the protagonist, blood on his lips, says that now their fight is going to begin. Did he seriously just go feral and take a bite out of the guy's nose? Delphine stays calm, realizing Furman won't be able to move after that injury. What she doesn't understand is how she didn't notice the axe almost hitting her. It is the protagonist being taken over by that cursed spirit again. He says his head is spinning. He doesn't really understand what's going on, but he's full of energy. The shaved head guy approaches with a strange calm, walking as if he's in a shopping mall, presenting his axe and challenging Ian to a duel. But Ian tosses a sword at his feet, forcing him to dodge to the side. Then he's already behind him, swinging his leg over, grabbing him by the shoulder, and slamming him face first into the ground. I thought he was going to be nice and let the guy be, but instead he grabs the sword and drives it right into his shoulder too. Deserved, right? That bastard had been hacking away at Porcelain. The mage from their group calls out to Olmor, and immediately starts casting something. Shards of ice come flying toward Ian, but he manages to dodge, and in the middle of the evasive move, he swings his spinning sword, but she manages to block it with her staff. Then another one comes flying in, man, it spins right into her leg. She drops straight down, holding the stump and begs him to stop, but he lands a clean hit. I don't know if he killed her, but her head hit the ground like a rock. Right then, the bathrobe-clad troublemaker asks what technique that Prince of the Axe just used. What a ridiculous, cringeworthy name. She's certain he's using something normal people shouldn't know and demands he explain himself. Ian just tells her to shut up and come at him. Letter number 11 says that from that victory on that day, the person writing the letters learned the taste of victory. From then on, she began to take an interest in him and never imagined she would love him forever. I don't know if Syria is the one writing these letters, because it would be too obvious if it were her. But then again, maybe that's the point. Sometimes the obvious answer is just bait, you know? Next chapter, Delphine keeps pressing him, telling him to stop dodging the question. She says the fighting style he used against Olmor is a Sacred Kingdom technique, Jujutsu style. On top of that, the undetectable axe throw was because of some kind of sword circle. That's something Syria once explained as motion and stillness, a state where movement and stillness become one, where it looks like you're standing still, but you're actually moving, which doesn't make sense at all, right? Ian naturally asks how something like that is even possible, but Delphine explains that it's a difficult technique to grasp yet extremely powerful. At that moment, Ian wonders where this memory of his comes from. He doesn't remember ever experiencing something like that. He just tells her she must be mistaken. He has no idea what she's talking about. But she draws her sword right away, saying he clearly doesn't want to reveal where he learned it, so she'll just have to force it out of him. She rushes forward with a relentless series of attacks, and now his courage is running dry. Her blade nearly slices his neck. She keeps mocking him, calling him a coward who only runs away. He stumbles clumsily, drops his sword. Oh, but at the same time, he tosses it. She dodges it, but then, wait, what? The thing comes spinning back like a boomerang from behind while he charges in with his axe. Delphine counters with a technique like a lion's claw, carving numerous slashes in every direction. She tells him he's delusional if he thinks he can beat her. He just keeps smiling like a madman, while she's trying to figure out how he dodged her attack. That technique sends out countless feints, so normally people can't avoid the real strikes. She reactivates her aura and says, fine, then. She'll just keep attacking. Ian keeps dodging and she's still trying to understand how. Then he's suddenly backed up against a tree, and she knows there's no way for him to escape. At that moment, Ian remembers how people who saw him fight while possessed by that spirit said it looked like he was bending space, like he was using topology magic in the middle of swordplay. Combining that with the so-called stillness movement, he decides to try something and hurls his axe. She blocks it and asks if he's so desperate that he's throwing away his own weapon. But as he moves in toward the attack, he thinks to himself that he doesn't have the talent to transform his body like that magical beast. Even so, he still had something else. One moment he's seeing the entire terrain around him, and it's like he slips right into her attack as if it's nothing. She tries to act calm, saying it's fine since he doesn't have a weapon. But he leans into her ear and asks if she wants to die right there. With the blade in her neck, she raises her hands and admits that this time she's lost. Embarrassed, she starts putting her sword away, saying she never imagined she'd lose to someone like him, only for him to cut her off mid-sentence by stabbing her, telling her that in this world, only the strongest survive. Well, Delphine, looks like you're done for, because he pulls the blade out and drives it into her back again. If there's one guy who doesn't mind beating on a woman, it's him. He drags the knife along her back, saying there's something they need to settle. First, she has to apologize to Syria. Delphine doesn't look too willing, but he pulls out the axe and warns her that if she doesn't apologize, she'll die. After taking 2 knife drags to the body, she can tell he's not bluffing. She sighs and says it seems she's been reduced to the miserable position of begging for her life. He replies that it's only necessary if she cares about staying alive. So she swallows her pride, turns to Syria, and apologizes for humiliating her and stealing her kills. She confesses it was her who spread those rumors at school and made everyone bully her. Then she turns back to Ian and asks if that's good enough. With the axe still at her neck, she says she was honest, so he better not pull the whole "you weren't sincere" act. But he tells her he was never interested in that from the start. He just wanted to make sure she understood what would happen if she got in his way. She says she understands perfectly, though personally, I think she still deserves another beating. Hopefully next chapter, she suffers a bit more. Letter number 12 is just a woman missing someone, and the next chapter starts right away with the exam results. No, I wanted to see the blonde get beaten more. The teacher is saying the festival was amazing and everyone did better than he expected. Risky and dangerous situations, even ones where there could have been casualties. But thanks to brave students, that extremely dangerous beast was eliminated. Then he announces the names of the 4 heroes. The little witch who was actually useful for once, Celine who got tossed around all the time, Syria who mostly fell to the ground, and there's a certain saintly lady wondering why he went through all that when she told him he'd only get hurt. And the man himself standing proud, Ian Perkis. The 4 of them had captured the most powerful creature and each would receive a bottle of dragon's blood. The teacher praises their capture, saying they could easily make at least 10,000 gold coins from it. Of course, Ian is far more interested in saving Emma. Too bad the item doesn't belong solely to him after all. They all won together. But the harem ladies are all saying they don't need the money, those noble brats. Even Syria says the same. Selene, on the other hand, is poor. And what does she say? She says that just getting the dragon's blood is enough for her, so he can do whatever he wants with the rest of the loot. Right away, he calls over the tall saint and says this should be more than enough of an offering to treat Emma. I'll admit I roasted him before for forgetting about Emma for a chapter, but it's been 30 chapters since that girl got hurt, and he's still focused on saving her. As always, the saint tries to place a hand over her heart, but it's hard to even find under all that, and she gives her blessing to the boy, who's all smiles. With that, the hunting festival wraps up, with the blonde taking way less of a beating than she deserved. Near the church, the saint tells him his arm has reached the point where it'll never fully recover. Ian moves his hand and says it's fine. His reflexes are just a bit slower, but he's ready for that. Without those risks, or if they had died, things would have been a lot worse. The saint then says she's jealous that he's willing to risk his life like that just to save Emma, and she's blushing all over. Hey, could she be the girl from the future? She then hands him something and says it's a secret between the 2 of them, using that super rare stone that only saints can have. She tells him to hurry and go since everyone's probably waiting to celebrate with him. He leaves while she quietly prays for God to bless him. And this guy's living the perfect life, huh? Walks out from the big saint and straight over to 3 drunk girls. Look at Liko there. Man, I'd even forgotten that guy existed. The protagonist is already trying to kick him out, saying this is the winner's table. But friend doesn't care and says he's staying even though he didn't go to the festival. The protagonist notices he's already drunk. Right then, Syria comes calling out for him, saying they need to have a little talk, just the 2 of them. But look at Soleil in the background, curious as ever. In the conversation, Syria admits that in the end, he's the one who defeated her sister. But he says what matters is that she didn't back down and prove herself strong. She wouldn't have to bow her head to anyone in the academy anymore. That makes her happy. She lowers her head, turns around and says she has something to tell him. The guy thinks she's about to confess, but instead she just kneels and thanks him, saying it's because of him everything worked out. He realizes he got ahead of himself thinking she'd confess. It was just a simple thank you. Then he remembers they've only known each other for a month, yet they've already gotten close. Out of nowhere, he pulls out a necklace and gives it to her, saying it's a gift he found and thought would suit her. A Scyphia flower? She once said her mother loved it. Hey, while he's busy with this little romance, you just know Celine is watching and burning with jealousy. And look, it even says in the letter, Scyphia first love. Yeah, obviously, you're Celine suffering. Poor girl. This is why the harem route is always best. You don't let any of them suffer. A bit later, Leto asks if he's got something going on with Syria. He says no, they're just friends. The friend says his situation is complicated. He's noticed the saint has been treating him really well too. Could it be she's in love with him? The protagonist tells him to screw off and flips him off, telling him to stop meddling. Leto replies that the one in trouble is him with all these women chasing after him. Not long after, they're heading to bed. Life's perfect, though you have to wonder, will that spirit take over his body tonight and cause trouble? The guy's lying in bed, drooling, wondering how he'll talk to them from now on. Then, another dream. This time, Ian arrives at a cabin. He approaches someone who says they haven't seen him in a long time. From the outfit, it seems to be the saint, and Ian says it's an honor to see her. He asks how things are on the Eastern Front. She says it's the same as always. They're running out of soldiers and the enemy numbers keep growing. It would be different if they were at least getting reinforcements and supplies, but that's not the case. Ian says the Eastern region is also facing difficulties. At that moment, he turns and someone says Delphine is coming. He looks confused and a voice says it can't be avoided anymore. Suddenly, he wakes up and wonders why he keeps having these dreams. He's gotten somewhat used to it, but maybe the heavy drinking last night made it worse. He goes to grab a bottle and finds a letter there. The chapter ends with letter number 13, where the person says a certain cat came to visit the imperial capital. She doesn't want to meddle too much in Ian's life, but trusts that he won't take action. And tonight, she'll dream of him again, Sephia. Next chapter, he's wondering why the letters keep coming. This one talks about how he had chosen an orphanage for the mission and the way he fought so courageously. But strangely, this letter is now from someone named Lucia, and he's wondering, where's Sephia? The last chapter's letter was from Sephia, and the one he woke up to now is from Lucia. And yeah, they confuse me too sometimes. Now I've organized things. First, the calendar has moved forward, meaning he's lost the memory of something. Second, he feels his body is way stronger, which means he must have drunk the dragon's blood. The amount of mana in his body had nearly doubled. Considering the time that's passed, that means Emma should already be awake. He heads toward the church, knocks on the door, and calls for the saint. At least this time, no one's giving him weird looks, so maybe nothing bad happened. But the second the door opens, someone slashes at him. It's Urine, who cuts him right away, and the protagonist is wondering what the hell is going on. The guy just looks back and says he seems to be back to being his usual weak self. That's when the protagonist realizes something definitely happened. A bit later, already sitting in front of the saint, who's not looking happy at all, he notices that, yeah, he must have messed up badly, because the whole place is destroyed. She immediately asks if he really doesn't remember anything that happened. He says no, but she laughs and says there's no way she's buying that. The boy swears on the name of the goddess that he truly doesn't remember, but she tells him to stop playing dumb. Looking disheartened, she says she gets it. He wants her to pretend nothing happened and just hand over that information. Information about how important that certain organization is. Just like us, the protagonist is trying to understand classified info organization. What is she talking about? Suddenly, a letter flies in and she says it contains the list of orphanages struggling despite receiving aid from the Holy Nation. Ian wonders why he even asked for this, but then remembers the letter also mentioned orphanages. He picks it up from the table, thanks the saint, and she asks what he plans to do with it. He replies that he has no idea. She takes that as him saying she doesn't need to know. She then turns around and says all the kindness she's shown him until now was a waste. Damn, just like that, he lost the biggest one. What a sad turn of events. I wanted the spirit to take over to make things more exciting, not more depressing. Then Urine comments that it really does seem like the boy was possessed. Not only is he claiming to have no memory, but his eyes are different, and he's back to being as weak as before. The protagonist realizes he's getting completely trashed. He wants to know what exactly happened here. Urine asks if he really doesn't even remember cutting his shoulder. The protagonist, looking all confused, says he has no clue what he's talking about. Urine then explains that when he walked into the room, the atmosphere was already strange. The saint apologized and warned that this meeting couldn't be in private. The protagonist said he'd get straight to the point. He wanted information on all the orphanages in the eastern region struggling financially despite receiving aid from the Holy Nation. The saint apologized, saying that no matter how close they were, she couldn't just hand out internal information like that. But then he asked if Archbishop Indel was doing well. She was confused, wondering why he was even talking about that person. Ian then mentioned that certain forces would try and get rid of that person, which to him was a clear sign that a certain faction was making a move. Still, he could pretend he didn't see anything if she just handed over the orphanage information. Urine knows that the saint had only recently started wanting to take down this human angel. It's strange that Ian already knows. Okay, let's connect the dots. There's an Archbishop Angel and the saint wants to bring him down because of corruption. And the protagonist is threatening to expose it if she doesn't hand over the information. The problem is that neither of them understands how he knows this. And now the best option for the two of them is to make sure he doesn't leak anything. But seeing their reaction, Ian just told them to come at him. Right away, Urine rushed in to slash him, but the protagonist simply dropped the teacup and disappeared right in front of him. In the next instant, Ian was already at his side and landed a cut that threw the fool off balance. The protagonist followed up with an axe strike, but Urine had to block again, and the kid kept the sequence going. The saint shouted Urine's name and cast a buff on him, which immediately let him stand up to Ian. Urine warns the boy he can't win, but then Ian runs a string of cuts across his shoulder. Once again, it's that thing with distorting space, and suddenly, the axe bite sinks into Urine's arm. Somehow, Ian was using the sword circle, and the kid was brutal. The guy has the axe buried in one shoulder, and Ian drives the sword into the other. Obviously, Urine knew he couldn't fight like that. Then the saint tried to punch our boy. Beautiful move. But he clearly didn't care. He just hopped aside and gave her a light tap on the arm. Urine wonders why this kid isn't surprised to see her using jujutsu techniques. Ian just fixes her with a stare, hooks his foot in front of her leg, and the girl goes down. Whoa, looks like the shock absorber landed on the wrong side. Now I notice Urine is pinned to the wall, calling out to her and asking how Ian has the nerve to do something like that to the saint. The protagonist just asks if he really wants to take more of a beating to shut his mouth. Then the saint asks who he is and why he's doing this. The boy suddenly decides it's time to farm aura. He goes over, sits in the chair, and says he is Ian Purkis. Of course, she says that much is obvious, but she wants to know exactly who he is. And Urine comments that the techniques he was using are only normal in the Holy Nation. He also noticed Ian used the sword circle with that axe. Neither technique is something anyone from this academy should know. The Saint says Yurin is right. It's better if Ayan is honest. Did she have enough power to make the noble politicians have him killed? Hey now, Saint, don't threaten my boy. He traced a little finger through the air and wrote dragon across her back. The name of the technique was blood dragon script, something only members of the imperial family should possess. And Yurin is trying to connect the pieces and figure out how Ayan has this ability. At the very least, it means he has some connection with the Empire, which is extremely dangerous. Then Ayan calls to the Saint and says this would be easier if she would just hand over the information. She answers that it makes no sense for him to say that after breaking her arm and skewering the night, but he asks if she wants things to be different. If she's interested, he can burn this whole place down in an instant. The outcome here has already been decided, so she needs to stop crying and obey. Now, finally, the little Saint trembles and says that in exchange for her handing over the information, he also can't let the business about the Archbishop leak. He says fine, walks over to Yurin, pulls out the axe, and pulls out the sword. Brutal. He glances at the Saint, who feels humiliated. Then he leaves, saying they should have obeyed and not resisted. Back in the present, Ayan wonders why someone who possessed the sacred dragon technique and the imperial family's power was possessing his body. He was just some random kid. Yurin then tells the boy not to worry too much. Even though he was weaker than that other version, he was more interesting and a better person to be around. Then he waves goodbye, asking him please not to be possessed again. The plan now is to clean up the mess the possession caused. On top of that, he still needs to deal with this mission about the orphanage. First, it was time to check the mission board. When he got there, everyone looked hesitant. Obviously, depending on the mission you accept, you get more or fewer points. He never cared about grades, so he never bothered to pick missions before. But now he was there looking for a mission involving an orphanage in the east. That's when he found one for the Guilford Children's Home. The mission was to look around, kill some creatures, and receive 25 gold coins. The difficulty was low or mediocre. In theory, it sounded simple, like exterminating some weak monsters. But if it showed up in his dreams, simple was definitely not what it would be. It would have been great if he could call the same team from the hunting festival. But second-year students aren't allowed to take missions, so Selene and Syria couldn't join. Elsie, however, was a third year, so she could. Now he just needed a few more people. Yurin would have been good, but he was always busy guarding the Saint. The problem was that he had at most a week to get this started, so he needed to decide on the members soon. I want to know what happened between him and the girls. I'm sure the spirit didn't just cause a little mess. Out of nowhere, someone grabbed his arm and started pulling him along. It was Lido, who shoved him against the wall and started looking him over. Then he gave a thumbs up and said the Ayan he knew was back. He was already sure the guy was going to say again that he lost his memories and was possessed. Our protagonist, however, went straight to the point. He wanted to know what he'd done this time. Lido said he'd spoken with that version, the future version of him who had taken control of his body. Then we see a bit of Lido asking who he is, and he answers that he's Ayan Purkis. Obviously. Lido, back off. Not even the girls get that close. He said he knew he wasn't Ayan because the Ayan he knew was way goofier and not that calm. But the one from the future revealed that yes, he was Ayan, just from a distant place. Still, he didn't need to doubt that he was the person he thought. Since his little trio of friends had known each other forever, Lido asked when the last time Selene wet the bed was. He answered 12, and then Lido asked another question and another, and he answered all of them. Then Lido asked if he was really from the future and got ready to punch him, wanting to know what he planned to do with Ayan's body. The only difference between the future version and the present one was 4 extra lines under the eye. And of course, Lido's attempt at a punch only ended with him being restrained, told to get out of the body. The future one, however, told him not to worry, that he wouldn't stay long. Lido told him to quit it, wanting to know why he was trying to ruin Ayan's life. To that, he answered that if he didn't do this, everyone would die. Then he turned, saying it was good to see him. And I'm sure Lido's dead in the future. Everyone's dead. His friend then asked why he was going so far and why, out of all people, he was the only one who came back to the past. He answered that it was because he had failed. Back in the present, the protagonist was still trying to wrap his head around this business of the one who possessed him being himself. Lido explained that, yeah, it's hard to believe, but based on the questions he'd asked, it seemed more logical. The obvious problem, of course, was the time paradox. Let's say you started a fire today and burn everything. The future one, who's dealing with a great disaster, comes back to the past and puts out the fire. Now that future no longer exists, so where would he return to? The protagonist says that you should return to the original future, you know, the one where everything went wrong. However, that would make the future Ayan a completely different person from who he is now. They would have different futures and different outlooks on life, even if part of their past was the same. The confused protagonist says that when he reads the letters, they talk about a future with a wonderful wife. There's nothing about humanity coming to an end. Lido then says that maybe the letter from the future is already from a changed future. That made things complicated. It was possible that the letter came from a different future than the one the person possessing him appeared from. Now Ayan is trying to figure out if all the letters could be coming from different people. At that moment, Lido says that lastly, he saw the future version heading to the forest. He didn't hear any rumors, but he's sure he did something there. Thinking about the forest makes Ayan remember Emma, so he asks where she is. Lido says that honestly, he really doesn't remember anything. Right away, the protagonist is knocking on the door and she opens it. He awkwardly asks if she's finally been released. She says of course yes and tells him to come in. Feeling a little awkward, he says he's been very busy and ended up not coming to see her after she woke up. She, however, asks if he's gone crazy. He already talked. He'd been saying all sorts of weird stuff with a wild look in his eyes, talking about thanking the future version of himself. She didn't understand a thing. Still, she decides it's no use putting it off any longer and thanks him for saving her. She found out about everything he did and the fact that he handed over a creature worth more than 10,000 gold coins. Embarrassed, he says she doesn't need to worry or repay anything. She says that's impossible. She has to make that value worth it somehow. She asks if, by any chance, he'd like a personal alchemist from House Perkis. Aya now doesn't know how to make her feel at ease after everything they've been through, so he simply asks her to keep on living the way she always has. He wants her to keep following her dream of making medicine, graduate from the academy, and go live with her father. That's how she should repay him. She laughs, wipes her tears, and says she knew he would say something like that. A little later, she wants to know why he came there, asking if she can help him with anything. He brings up the last time they talked about the letter from the future. She thinks it's strange he's so interested in it, but he says he's been reading books about it and wants her opinion. She replies that just as she said before, it's theoretically impossible. The only two chances she sees it happening are the end of the world or everything being destroyed by Delphin. Obviously, if the world is going to be destroyed, there's no harm in rewinding it. It's already gone anyway. She sees it happening with the death of the god Ars and him losing his power. He starts to realize that the only way something could be coming from the future is if everything had been destroyed. Then she tells him to drop that boring topic and says she has something for him since he's there. She grabs a potion from the shelf and tells him to always carry it in case he needs it. This potion, a few days ago, saved Delphine's life when she was almost dead in the forest. Right then, Ian remembers Leto talking about him having gone to the forest. Looks like he beat Delphine as much as she deserved. He asks what they found out, and Emma says she went to visit after Delphine was healed, but they denied her entry. The protagonist realizes, yeah, he's definitely involved in this. At the door, he thanks her for the medicine and says goodbye while she smiles, saying it's always good to see him. The next day, they also denied him entry, but with a little letter for her. There was the guy, and the girl had a cut on her neck, clearly beaten. The letter he sent read, "If you don't want to get beaten again, you better let me into the room." And there he was, with her shaking all over. He asks how she's feeling, but she, full of anger, wants to know why he's even there and how he has the nerve to ask her that. From the looks of it, he came just to laugh at the mess he made. Fine, she doesn't care. He can go ahead and destroy all the pride and confidence she has left, since he's already destroyed the person she used to be. Man, what to even do? He asks if it hurts, and she says of course it does, lowering her head and admitting it hurts a lot. Ian thinks she's pathetic, acting like some tragic heroine when in reality, she's the one responsible for all of this. He calls her out, saying she never cared about how much Syria suffered. Now she's playing the victim after spreading rumors, and when she finally gets just a small taste of her own medicine, she starts acting pitiful. She clearly needs a bit more adjustment. She's lying in bed, beaten and trembling, and begs him to stay away and not beat her like that again. But he pulls the letter out of his pocket, holds it up in front of her, and says this is what she's going to do. She's confused, so he explains that they're going to fix her personality through volunteer work. She better be ready because next week they're going. In the end, she doesn't exactly know what he did, but at least he gained another person to help with this mission. After recruiting Delphine, getting Elsie on board was easy as usual. Just show the axe. A week later, the bags are packed and it's time to step through the portal. It seems the third and fourth years still have something to take care of, so he's heading out first. Obviously, he has to be careful. There's still the rivalry between Delphine and Elsie, who hate each other. But just as he's about to step into the portal, bam, there's the saint, holding her nose and asking what the trash is doing here. Seriously, girl, you're the top one around here, you can't treat our boy like that. The protagonist just asks if she hates him that much, and she says she accidentally let her true disgust slip out. She points out that he doesn't seem to have any companions, so he should be more worried about his own safety. He tells her not to worry, his companions are on their way. But they're talking about him traveling alone while they're also heading out as just two people. She says it's not like she can walk around with just anyone by her side. Plus, she's going to do volunteer work, not a mission from the board. The two keep glaring at each other and trading insults while Urine watches. He then asks where Ian's going. The protagonist says he's headed to the Guilford orphanage, and Urine immediately replies that they must be going to the same place. The saint wants to know why she has to endure so many trials in life, and the protagonist is already itching to put her in her place. As she passes by, muttering a prayer for the Holy Lord to give her patience, she says something about obedience without resistance. Ian remembers saying the same phrase and asks what it means. She says it's interesting to see a bandit like him curious about the teachings of the Lord and explains, obedience without resistance means being devoted until death, always following the will of God. But as she walks toward the portal, she adds that she's sure someone without morals like him would never understand. Still, the protagonist knows his future self wouldn't have said something like that for no reason. There must be a deeper meaning he's not grasping yet. From the first letter to the day he saved Emma to winning the hunting competition, everything has been thanks to the information he's been receiving. But how exactly are these messages being sent from the future? Since something like this could only be sent if the future had already been destroyed, at least he's certain he needs to get that like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.